I'd like to call to order the special Village Council meeting for the Village of Beverly Hills for Thursday, November 6, 2025. Ms. Brown, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Mercer?
Present.
Mr. O'Gorman?
Here.
Mr. Abboud?
Here.
Mr. Drummond?
Here.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Rojusco?
Here.
Ms. Cascametti?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance. All right, are there any amendments to the agenda or a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. George, at this time, I'd like to move that we approve the agenda as published. Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Any public comments from the large audience in attendance that no one at home can see? See it back there, we'll go on. Interviews. First up, Rosati, Schultz. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to come see us. We're going to go through, we got a series of questions. We're trying to keep it standardized across everybody so that we have a fairly even methodology with which to evaluate people. Made the first cut, so good job there, thank you. And our hope is to, after we talk to three different firms tonight, make a decision and then work to get a contract in place as soon as we can and get somebody hopefully in a chair here by the beginning of December would I think be reasonable. So we'll just we can start moving down the table. Mr. Mercer, you want to kick it off, or you want to?
Sure.
All right.
Mr. George,
Yep,
could I
sorry.
ask, just briefly, I know we've got a list of questions. Could we do introductions?
Oh, certainly. I apologize. Very good. Good call. So if you could go ahead, we've all got names here. We're happy to tell you who we are, but I
They're on
think,
the
you know,
slides,
we got big name tags. So yeah, if you want to give us some introductions, that would be appreciated.
So I'm Kristen Bricker-Cole, but I will be the lead for the village if our firm is selected. I have been representing municipalities exclusively for over 26 years now. I started in the city of Westland, and then moved on to some other firms representing a number of communities, mainly in Oakland County. But I also spent 10 years as an in-house attorney with the Charter Township of Canton in Wayne County. As you'll hear probably us say a few times, all we do is represent municipalities, whether it's as general counsel or defense and litigation. That is our sole practice. We are at 26, soon to be 30 lawyers in 2 offices, and that's all we do, all day, every day. And we have some phenomenal lawyers, both in the GC work, general counsel, and in our defense litigation. I understand that the village has worked with a couple of our attorneys through the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority. And from what I understand, they were good outcomes, so hopefully you had pleasant experiences if you were involved. So that's a little bit about me.
All right.
I'll go next. My name is Steve Joppich. I've been a municipal attorney for 31 years. Kristen has pretty much summed up the firm. I'm happy to answer your questions that you have prepared. I look forward to it.
Super.
And appreciate the opportunity to be here, by the way. It's
For sure.
very nice. I can't say I've been in here before. Very nice city, village hall here, so.
Thank
yeah.
you.
I'm Matt Zaleski. I've been a member of Rosati Schultz for over 8 years now. I've been practicing law for 18, and all of that has been municipal law. I got my start with the city of Dearborn, first as a law clerk while I was still in law school for a couple of years, and then ultimately was promoted to assistant corporation counsel. I had an interesting little detour where I decided I needed more time in academia, so I was working on a master's and a PhD, never quite finished the PhD, at Michigan State for several years in between, and was also teaching courses on constitutional law, administrative law, and other law-related subjects over at Michigan State and also at Eastern. And during my time at Rosati Schultz, I've been balancing my practice between both general counsel and litigation work with a particular specialty in land use and zoning, First Amendment law, construction, and related administrative areas.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Judge.
Good call. Thank you. Start us off with questions?
Absolutely. Thank you. Got to meet a couple of you out in the hall. Missed shaking your hand, but at the end, so good. I'm just going to start in with municipal law expertise. You talked a little bit about it, but if you just go into a little bit more detail, appreciate it. Describe like your experience providing general counsel to municipalities, maybe some of the ones in the area that you represent also, particularly areas such as zoning, your experience in zoning, contracts, FOIA. I'm not familiar with OMA, is that OMA?
Open meetings.
Open Meetings Act.
Open Meeting Act, okay, I didn't know that that was what we used it, but, all right. Open Meeting Act, that's what I call it, and then ordinance drafting. So we obviously do quite a bit of work in ordinances and zoning, so that would be a part I'd like to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I've mainly worked as a general counsel as opposed to the defense litigator. So those are the kinds of things I've been doing my entire career. We have an attorney in our office who does the FOIA and Open Meetings Act training for the MMRMA. His office is next to mine, available anytime for questions, but particularly when I was an in-house attorney, I dealt with FOIA every single day. Large community, we would get a lot of requests, including those repeat offenders that make our life so interesting. But yeah.
We have none of those here.
Nope.
Really? I think you might be the exception in the entire state of Michigan.
We might also be lying.
So, yeah, I mean, those are all things that we do. They're things that our attorneys make presentations on and speak. I've spoken at the Michigan Association of Planners. I've spoken at the Townships Association. I know Steve and Matt both are serial presenters, educating not only local government officials, but also other municipal attorneys in all of those areas.
Great, thanks.
Any follow-ups on that? I mean, when I look at the list, some of the things I see, we talk about zoning, we've got somebody who bought a piece of land that's currently, I don't know that I'd call it commercial, but it's zoned residential, and we're dealing with how do we, how do we, massage the conversation around that not being a car wash.
We've
You
been
know.
seeing a lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of work I've been doing my entire career, even starting in Dearborn.
Mm-hmm.
My specialty was land use. I've been experienced in all the areas of law, but from the general counsel perspective, writing ordinances, advising the zoning boards, planning commissions, in Dearborn and Huntington Woods and Lyon Township, and other places. I sat on the planning commission in Dearborn for 10 years after I left my job there, but continued to live there until I moved down the road in Royal Oak. And then through my litigation experience, just having that full immersion in land use litigation issues really colors the perspective for advising at the general counsel level. What can you do in this situation to avoid litigation or to be in the best position? How do you structure your ordinances to avoid a challenge and really make things work efficiently?
Matt is our resident expert on short-term rentals.
We might have
Among many other.
Might have a need for a
Transitional
conversation
housing
around
is
that.
another one that he's spent a lot of time on. So the sort of the more current topics that you see popping up, especially in developed communities like the Village.
And when we talk about ordinance drafting, one of the things we're dealing with that I'm sure you hopefully can speak to a bit is the fact that some of our code has been around a while and might need some refresh. When one of the first things we did when a couple of us got here was got rid of the code that in 2019 still made it illegal to appear dressed as a member of the opposite sex. But there is language around not throwing snowballs or missiles or projectiles or kicking or knocking a ball, so do you have experience guiding a community through just the soup to nuts, going through code and trying to carve out dead wood or update language?
So currently, I'm working with the city of Novi. They are due to recodify their whole code. So that involves, I realized, or I noticed you guys have somewhat recently, put your ordinances on Municode.
Yeah.
So we're working with a staff person at Municode to go through every single chapter of the code and, you know, compare it, see what's out of date based on state law, see what makes no sense, like the provisions you just mentioned in 2025, and literally going chapter by chapter through the whole code book, revising, updating, and then at the end of that process, you know, the city will readopt the whole thing, hopefully fully updated and ready for the times that we are in now.
Yeah, and if I could just add, you know, we live with the ordinances in the communities we represent. We, you know, become almost best friends with them because we learn them so well. Because you know, a lot of our clients that we serve as general counsel for, we serve for a long time. I've been the city attorney in Farmington Hills. I started out as assistant city attorney there in 1994. And in 2002, I became the city attorney. I've been the city attorney there ever since. So, and that's true of Novi and a lot of other communities we represent. I know Tom Ryan has been here for a long time, and we think that's important and try to create that sort of a relationship because that sort of institutional knowledge through your city attorney can help you as a city council, help city staff on a daily basis, and it can also keep you consistent in what you do, not contradicting yourself as time goes by. And with the ordinances, the law changes, and we monitor the law, and a lot of times, you know, it's almost impossible. The law changes so much, it's almost impossible to know when a statute has changed or a case has come out that changes some little aspect of, say, your littering ordinance or something, you know, one of your minor ordinances or a major. We try and do our best to keep monitoring those laws and let you know this could impact your ordinance. Like for example, one thing that a lot of communities are encountering that have parks are camping situations where unhoused individuals will reside in a park or in a public area. And the Supreme Court recently reversed itself and changed things on how that can be addressed. So we communicated with a number of our clients, letting them know that. That's just one example of many, letting you know so that you don't fall too out of date. It helps you as you go along. So doing the audit or whatever you're calling it at this point is a great thing. Zoning ordinance as well. I know you have a planner and whatnot, and keeping your, we've done many zoning ordinances where you go A to Z in your zoning ordinance. A lot of times right after a master plan's been updated and you go through it and you update it piece by piece or maybe redo it. Some communities want to go through their entire zoning ordinance. We do that. We've done that many times. So we have a lot of experience working with ordinances and developing them with you. It's one of your legislative, it is your legislative power. It's really important, obviously, as you know. So we're there with you if you choose us and we go through that process with you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, quick question on that. So, several ordinances are kind of state-driven, and we need to keep updated and stay with the flow. But then there are more subjective ordinances that are the desire of the, you know, body here or the population in the village. How have you managed where you have two polar opposite views between cities municipalities you support, and how do you like manage that? Because it's kind of like one village wants an ordinance one way and the other city wants it the complete opposite. Like, how do you manage that internally?
Well, in the communities like the village here that are home rule entities, you have a little bit more leeway. And so, you know, the community, the attitudes, I don't know, sometimes the politics help drive what direction one ordinance goes in versus, you know, your next door neighbor. our job is to make sure that it doesn't conflict with the law, isn't preempted by the law, and that it's written in such a way that it achieves the goals of the community that's considering it. So,
And I can add to that a little bit, because, you know, I think part of the question is if community A is saying this ordinance fits our community, and we wanna do it this way, and community B says that doesn't, what community A is doing doesn't fit our community, we wanna do something different, how would we handle that? If we represent both, for example, each of you are independent clients, and those ordinances are your laws. So there is a divide there, and just because community A wants to do it one way and community B wants to do it another way, it does not sway us. We're, I don't know a better word than neutral or Switzerland. We are circumspect. We look to you. If this is your legislative desire, our job is to make it happen for you, to write it for you, to give it to you. And if you say, oh, I don't like these words in here, as long as the law says the changes you're looking for are good, that's your legislative prerogative, your decision-making, that's your discretion. And if the law does say that, look, you can't do it that way, we let you know. And the other thing that we like to do and take a lot of pride in is saying, okay, the law says you can't do it that way, but maybe we can get close to that, or there's another way to approach that, and we'll counsel you on that. So you may have an objective in the community through an ordinance that you're trying to achieve, but there may be another way to do it if doing it through the ordinance the way that you initially thought is the correct way. We might be able to help guide you around, not around, but to the same objective through a different path.
So if we wanted to put 30-foot fences and allow those in the village and it wasn't restricted by the state, you guys would be able to figure out how to support that even if it seems crazy?
As long as it's legal.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It
Yeah.
doesn't violate any sort of
Right.
legality, but we wanted to say, yeah, we want 30-foot fences everywhere. That would be, and I'm not,
I know fences are kind of a hot topic for
they
you
are.
guys,
It's,
so.
I tried to exaggerate so I wasn't in a weird place, but,
Sure, and even if it's not legal, we're gonna provide you that counsel,
okay.
and you still make the decision. Clients don't always agree with our legal advice, and that's, again, you get elected to these positions to make those hard decisions, and you may have a very good reason for doing it and risking the chance that you might get a challenge, and that's, you know, we accept that, it's not, doesn't
Not
affect us
personal,
personally.
yeah.
No, we're just doing, we give you our best advice, and you make the big decisions, so.
Yeah, I like to say I'm not the +1 council member. I'm not here to question the wisdom of the policies or which side of a policy you should fall on. If there's a way to do it legally, then it's our role to find the vehicle to get you to your policy objectives.
Thank you. Mr. O'Gorman, you wanna go next?
Keep it moving, yeah.
Yeah.
And I apologize, I take notes on a computer, so I'm not ignoring anything if you see me typing, not sending emails. Right?
Sure.
So, how do you approach advising elected and appointed bodies like the Village Council, Planning Commission, and Zoning Board of Appeals to ensure decisions are both legally sound and practical?
Well, part of that comes from getting to know the philosophy of the community, the goals of the board, or, you know, the zoning board or the planning commission or the village council. So that's when we would, you know, use the opportunity to put together a legal opinion, spend some time in closed session to discuss, you know, whatever the issue is that's in front of us, and then from there, take the input from council and again, figure out what the will of the community is and the elected officials that are making those final decisions.
Once you have that input, how do you translate that into guidance for us?
Well, I mean, it comes through working with staff as well. I mean, you know, like Mr. Rothy would be our sort of day-to-day contact, and it's starting with him, giving him ideas, discussing, brainstorming, and then putting together whatever it is, an ordinance, a policy, a contract even, making sure with his input that it's in line with, again, the goals of the council. And just, it's a collaborative thing for sure, whether it be Mr. Rothy or your planning and economic development director, whatever staff person is in charge of whatever the issue is.
And when it comes to the meetings and making sure the decisions are being made soundly, Kristen mentioned that we do offer trainings, as you want them for various boards and committees. It's not unusual for communities we represent to ask us to make kind of like outline motions, maybe not giving suggested motions per se, putting the words in boards or commissions' mouths, but just giving outlines of the standards of review for a special land use or whatever the issue is. And of course, just being there to ensure that procedures are sound, your bylaws are sound, because it's that framework, that procedural framework that ensures that your decisions are upheld as well.
Just a little follow-up. You mentioned community's needs and wants. Can you elaborate a little more? If the community wants something and say it's different than what the council is doing, just where does the community come into play?
Well, obviously certain things, certain ordinances, you're required to have public hearings on. The council can certainly take public comment on anything it wants to. But at the end of the day, it is the council that, makes the final decision. And my comment about the community was, the legislative body sets the policy and the goals for the community. That's what your residents elected you to do. So, you can hold public hearings and take input if that changes a direction you guys want to go, or an idea, or how you're gonna frame an ordinance. That's up for the council to decide, and we take your instructions from you. And so, if we've been heading in one direction and based on public feedback, the council directs us to go in a different one, that's who we take our charge from.
Thank you.
If I can follow up on that
Sure.
quickly, when that happens sometimes, say council's changing to another direction and we're at a meeting, and we're sitting there with you, and we see council changing directions on an ordinance, for example, which is where or some sort of action like that. We have a lot of experience at city council, planning commission, ZBA meetings. We know how to and when to jump in to the discussion and, obviously very respectfully, both to the public and to council, advise that this may be, for example, say something along the lines of this may be something that we should look into a little bit further, or something that we would like as city attorney or village attorneys to maybe evaluate for you and provide,
Background,
some legal
Guidance.
advice and background on, if you're gonna head down this path, what are some of the issues you should be aware of if you're gonna head down that path, so that you have proper legal counsel. In other words, kind of calling a timeout, or letting you know there's something here that we need to dig into further. Don't just make a quick reaction to it, let's take a look at it. So we wouldn't be a bump on the log, we would be there to help you not go all the way down a path that we think might have some issues that you need to address still.
That was one question, if I can just follow up on that. So during a meeting, a topic comes up and there's some legality to it that is questionable or going the wrong direction, or we have a question or query for council during a meeting, and you either do or don't have the answer off the top of your head. How do you handle those situations kind of real time? I'm just curious what your best practice or how you would handle it.
If there's a question that comes up that we don't know the answer to, I think Steve gave the perfect example of, we would call attention, whether through Mr. Rothy or directly to the council, and say, I think this is something we need to spend a little time and take a look on it, and we would suggest that the council may want to table the matter, for us to look into it a little bit more before giving an answer that we're not comfortable with and that council may be not prepared to hear the answer to, depending on the issue.
And if you feel you know the answer, what's the best practice there during a meeting?
Well, for me personally, I would respond and say that's a legal issue. If council directs me to, I'm happy to share my answer, but if you know, because it's a legal question, you may want to have me put this in writing and give it to you at a different time.
Okay, thanks.
If it looks like something immediately is going down the wrong
Sideways.
path
Yeah.
at the meeting, then of course
Let us know
we
there's
would
a
jump
waterfall
in
there and we need to
say,
probably-
"Look, this,
Right.
Yeah.
respectfully, this is not a productive path for the conversation, or something is happening procedurally. I mean, I'm a procedure hawk. I love to jump in on procedure issues when needed. Of course, we jump in the moment.
And also there's a lot of gray areas involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it might not be, we might not be able to give a solid, you know, if it's an Open Meetings Act question, a lot of times those are pretty cut and dry. And we can provide those, or procedural question, or Robert's rules, that is needed at the meeting
Yeah.
to be given. But, you know, if something is rubbing against unconstitutional taking of property, or something very complex like that with a lot of gray, that's where, you know, let's take a timeout, let's look into this, and we'll provide you guidance, and come back at a future meeting and go through this with you.
Thanks.
I just kind of wanted to build on that and some of the things that you were touching. I think we've all found ourselves in positions, especially on some of these more interesting community political conversations, where we'll have, you know, a longtime resident that's been very involved in the community and has taken time to read the code, but will maybe come in at a public comment and misrepresent what the code truly says. And I know I found myself in a position where I don't have it at my hands to understand, but it's taking us down a path and the understanding of the community down a path that is not truly what our charter and our code says. I think for me personally, that's one of the situations that I want to understand, that we are going to have support in those moments. And if not in those moments, follow through afterwards. So understanding how you would handle a situation. I mean, I think everybody on this council at some point has possibly misspoken about what they thought the charter might have said or what it might point to. We do our best, right? But we're
Sure.
only humans and we're not attorneys.
Right.
And so how would you provide to support those when we ourselves are mistaken, or if a member of the community comes up and is misrepresenting what the charter truly says?
Yeah. So in an age of laptops,
It does
it's
make it
very
easier.
convenient, because when I go to a community's meeting, whether they provide the laptop or I bring my own, I will always have the code up, you know, ready to be referenced. And if asked, I will read the language. I will try to stay away from giving an interpretation. Again, you know, it's essentially giving a legal opinion, and the council may not want the public to hear what my opinion is on that. But sometimes just having the language and reading it directly is a good way to redirect the conversation, because, you know, no, that's not what it says. Here's what it actually says. And oh, by the way, you also need to look at this section and this definition and
Right.
whatever. That has calmed people down in a lot of situations. Just, okay, I'm reading from Municode. This is what it says.
Awesome, thank you.
And the other aspect of that is the personal side of it as well. As sitting there with you, if you have a resident, they're probably not ill-intentioned. They probably have the best of intentions. So respect, not embarrassing them is something that we certainly try to do. And obviously, if it's you, we're not gonna embarrass you in public. So the way it's presented would be very carefully presented, such that, you know, it's recognized that, perhaps that everybody's not an attorney, or everybody doesn't have it in front of them. Kristen, I'll speak for you, I do have it in front of me, I have it right here. Understand, you know, it's hard, not, if you don't have it right in front of you, you know, that sort of acknowledgement is very important, I think, because if your residents take the time out of their night or day to come and see you and talk to you, they care. They care about their community, just like you do, and giving them their respect, if you know, assuming they're acting respectful in almost all instances. That is the way it should operate, and I think we all try to do that. I think I speak for all of us, and others in our firm as well, do this well.
All right, okay. Mr. Booth, you wanna?
Yes, sir, we'll move along here. Okay, how do you approach, this one is legal risk management. just a title here. How do you approach helping a municipality avoid litigation? That's the first part of the question. And then more importantly, when litigation does arise, what is your general strategy for defending the village?
So for cases that, well, if we recognize an issue of potential liability, one of the first things we do, since we know you are an MMRMA community, is we reach out to your regional risk manager and have a conversation with them, get some guidance from that perspective about, you know, how should we advise the village on how to address this issue, to try every possible avenue to keep the village out of litigation, because we understand litigation's expensive, it's time consuming, and, you know, it's never a good outcome. Even if you win, it's still, you know, it's not a great scenario for the community. So we work with the regional risk managers. We try to avoid even if they can't help us, we try to look for solutions to keep the community out of lawsuits for all the same reasons I just mentioned. But if it comes to the point that litigation is filed against you, or for some reason the village needs to file a lawsuit, we have the experience, we try to resolve it as quickly as possible. Sometimes the filing of a lawsuit will trigger an immediate negotiation that for whatever reason wasn't able to be held before, and we can come up quickly with a resolution, get the case resolved and move on. We understand, because I tell my clients all the time, anybody can sue you at any time for anything. Sometimes you just can't help it, and sometimes people are unreasonable and you can't avoid it. But again, even in the case that litigation is filed, we try to resolve it. We bring in our litigation pros, me too, and try to keep it as painless as possible.
Yeah, I think from the prevention angle, one of the great benefits of working with a firm like ours that does nothing but municipal law, both general counsel and litigation, is our collective experience allows us to really anticipate where potential liabilities could lie down the road. And our collective knowledge comes into your ordinance drafting. It comes into advising your boards, your council. And we see so many lessons from other communities on the litigation angle. You know, we get fact patterns as they land in our lap that we had nothing to do with through the insurance defense side. And we, ooh, yeah, I would never want to do that. And it gives us an opportunity to, when similar situations come up in your community, we'll be able to channel that institutional knowledge as to what other communities have done, what the law is, what the state of law is on various ordinance topics, so that hopefully we never even get to the point where we're assessing risk. But yeah, sure enough, I mean, even if you do everything right, there's always somebody out there who wants to sue, and you will get those situations. And when that day comes, we look at the lawsuit. Every lawsuit is unique on its own facts. Something just went wrong, or it's an issue of first impression. Those are the ones that are always scary when you're dealing with some new topic where the courts haven't really, figured it out. You could be in a long haul, but we'd assess where you're at on that spectrum of risk and what the possibilities are for selling, or if we just want to fight, what the chances are. I mean, it would be a very comprehensive analysis.
Just to follow up to that, I know you have experience in other municipalities and other city, villages, and townships. Do you typically just settle immediately before it gets to the litigation, or you actually assess the situation and see how the village could be right and get the due diligence and whatever,
Absolutely.
The city's not gonna go sue anybody. Typically, that doesn't happen. It's always the other way around, so.
Right. Yeah, every case, like Matt said, has its own unique circumstances, facts, history. So, if it comes up, if the other party, whatever it is, whether it's a property owner, business owner, if they have counsel, we try to work with them to come to a resolution. It just depends. Every situation is unique.
Some cases you just have to fight.
Yeah.
And there's,
I mean,
And
I'm
there's-
happy to do that.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
there's
you know,
cases
it just
where
depends.
the government wants to take a stand on the issue because, state your reason. And then there's other cases where it's just you have an annoying resident who just wants to have their way and they feel like they're gonna be justified somehow if they file a lawsuit.
Yeah, especially in the land use area too. So many of these lawsuits are just, people trying to sue and settle and do zoning through consent judgment. But if you've had all your ducks in a row and you do not want this development in your community, then we don't have to talk settlement. We'll defend what we did together and see it all the way through. And in many cases, you'll prevail.
the only reason I bring it up, because we had a case of a person, something happened where a bike got caught into some drain and guy ended up being a quadriplegic and ultimately passed away. But I was just kind of curious on those situations. When you see what's already happened, does it make sense to agree with them right away? Or do you litigate, or do you negotiate, or do you just, you could be in big trouble and just settle right now? Which is what typically happens.
Well, I think that's the perfect example of a case where the MMRA would be involved because there was, someone
It was.
seeking money damage, yeah.
Yeah.
So they have their own set of standards that they evaluate these kinds of claims on. And they may decide to settle it, or they may hire us to actually litigate it, so.
And just to add on that, any settlement, of course, comes to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's lines of communication with you. Typically, when a case is started up, one of the first things that happens after we get all the facts, investigate it, look into it, maybe file the initial responses, is to report to you what the case is about, what we think the strengths and weaknesses are, what's the likelihood of success. Try to assess that as much as you can at the beginning of the matter. And also talk about settlement and whether it's a case that's likely to settle and whether we need to go through some discovery before we can get to the point of talking about settlement, or is this a case that the other side has already reached out
Right.
and let you know? So, a lot of communication.
Thank you.
I'm gonna jump around, because some of these, I think, just as we range in our conversation.
Yeah, someone covered some.
So, one of the obvious important things when we're moving on from a relationship that spans 40-plus years is transition. What's your onboarding process? What process do you go through with village staff, with council, to understand how to operate and aid us in the way that makes the most sense for us, and then how to go through the code, charter, and understand that?
So, as it happens, I have recently become one of the attorneys for Clarkston, which is a community that Mr. Ryan gave up, retired from. One of the very first things we did was sit down with myself, the other city attorney, and the city manager, and Mr. Ryan.
Right.
He, sort of brought us up to speed on all the hot button issues that needed to be addressed. And then talked about some goals over the next 6 to 12 months that the city had in mind. And then after that, it was just sort of working with, in that case, the city manager, reaching out to Tom. Steve and I have known Tom for a very long time. And we have a great relationship, and he's always willing to, take a phone call and help fill in some gaps. But obviously working with staff that's here now too. So it's just a process of getting that list of what's most important right now, what's coming down the pike, and then just through that working on those issues, getting up to speed, becoming familiar with your charter and your ordinances.
Okay.
Which is already started.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I did read your
Typical
charter.
thing.
I did read your charter.
Yeah, and similarly, I've been involved, we recently were welcomed as the city attorney for the city of Berkeley, and my colleague Lisa Hamame is the lead on that account. And we, in addition to having conversations, we spent a day at the city hall and just sat down with department heads and met the staff and then used that as a springboard for more conversations. And we talked about all the nuts and bolts, such as, what types of legal reports do you want in terms of our activities and things happening in the community, and, just how do we email each other? So all those things would certainly be covered as quickly as possible. If we want to engage on that.
All right.
The village frequently enters into interlocal agreements, contracts for professional services, and developmental agreements, which are approached to negotiating and reviewing such agreements.
Are we opposed to it? I'm sorry, was that your question?
What's your approach?
Oh, what's
Yeah,
your approach? Well, first of all, we'd have to make sure we don't have any conflict with the other community. Like if one of our other clients is on the other side, we would have to,
Like
Address
Southfield
that.
Township, their office is right next to ours.
Right.
Our jurisdictions kind of overlap, so,
Yeah.
there are some agreements that we make with them. They used
Sure.
to, collect our taxes on our behalf or handle our dog licensing and those types of
Right.
things, so,
right?
some of those may be one-sided relationships or others, and I'm just wondering how you guys.
And I get, that is interesting that you talk about, because I kind of view interlocal agreements as if we're collaborating with Berkeley and Southfield and whoever it is to say, hey, we're gonna have mutual aid,
Mutual aid,
we're all working towards the same goal, so I guess that's, and since
Yeah.
you do work with a lot of municipalities, that's interesting to me, I guess. I don't know the legal framework around
How that works.
the collective versus the individuals, so
So
I guess
in a
that's.
case like that, we would obviously make sure
Yeah.
everybody was aware. It would be different attorneys, because like Matt said,
Mhm.
Lisa does Berkeley, I think Steve does Southfield. If I was your main contact, as long as the clients all know and they all consent, and for the most part,
Right.
things are moving along, and it's just making sure all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, that's fine, that's not a violation of the ethics rules. So, no issues there. If it would come to an issue, and it looked like there was gonna be a disagreement, that could
You're conflicted,
be conflicted
Yeah.
somehow, yeah.
and then do you just guide us towards other counsel?
Yeah.
Okay.
We would all have to withdraw,
From both communities?
yep,
Okay.
So, getting back to the question about intergovernmental agreements,
Mhm.
you might have some with the county, for example, we encounter those a lot.
Right.
Pretty much every community we represent, and so we regularly are negotiating intergovernmental agreements with the county. We've done regional, state, local, mutual aid agreements. We've, done all sorts of, 425 and annexation type 425 agreements. I don't know if that's an issue here, but you name it, we've kind of handled most types, and a lot of shared services.
yeah.
For example, Farmington Hills, perfect example. We represent both, and we, they know and we work with those, between those two communities. It actually ends up saving a lot of, because like, you said, there's mutual interest among the two
Mhm.
communities to get this in place, so having the same council actually ends up saving some money and time,
Super.
and working things out. Obviously, working with staff also helps with that. A lot of times, staff can work with their counterparts at the county or the other community to help negotiate through the details. A lot of times, there's technicalities, let's take IT, talking at technology, might be beyond the scope of our abilities, so your IT person or village manager, might have some special knowledge about how you operate. So it also involves working with staff and sometimes yourselves to know what you want in those agreements. So we're used to doing all that, we do it pretty regularly.
Thank you.
Mr. George, would you
Yeah.
have a quick follow-up question? I know you guys said your firm is strictly municipal law.
Correct.
Do you also represent these sort of governmental authorities, GLEWA, WRC, or SACRA? I mean, Oakland County? I mean, do you talk about a situation where the parties don't have mutual interest, right? We're negotiating rates, sewer disposal rates or something, right?
Sure,
I mean,
let me
Go
get that
ahead.
one,
Yep.
because that's a firm-wide question.
Yeah,
We don't represent any of those directly, and in fact, the mention of Southfield, I do some special counsel work for Southfield, and our firm does as well. It's occasional, it's it's not, we're not. They have
Township or city?
Southfield City, we have,
Okay.
Okay.
yeah, we have regular, they have their own in-house counsel, but sometimes we get brought in because we have specialized abilities in certain areas and get asked out, you know. But, GLEWA, I know what you're talking about, WRC as well, no, we don't represent them, and we're regularly in meetings with them. If it's not intergovernmental agreements, sometimes it's, you know, working
Disagreements.
through issues that you have, sometimes, on opposite sides. Did you mention SACWA? or-
Yeah, well, or
Yeah.
any of these sort of authorities where like, you know, the mutual aid example is a good example, but I'm thinking about the opposite scenario.
Sure.
Where we're not, you know, where maybe there's more conflict involved.
I
So
mean,
I was
we've
just
got a-
curious the scope of your representation
We have a
there.
big, giant retention basin that, you know, treats, in certain situations, treats water that it releases into the river, and if we're getting into a
Got a CSO base.
a disagreement over the operation of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About all we have done, for GLEWA over the years is some, litigation defense. We're not doing anything currently that I'm aware of. That was not a lot, but, WRC, Oakland County, GLEWA, SACWA, no,
Okay.
no conflicts there. I
Okay.
can represent that.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. George.
We've kind of been sort of filling in the blanks because you've been answering some questions as we've been going along. But one of the questions that we had, and we've had some conversation around this already, is working through and updating local ordinances, and how to deal with the balance of legal precision, with reliability and enforceability. Our village has, ordinances that are 50 years old. And we're working and want to continue working on updating those, but we have what we have until we update it. And so can you please help explain your understanding of the criteria set forth by the courts to determine if an ordinance stands as constitutional, and share your approach for dealing with these ordinances as identified both in an administrative level and a council level until we can fix them?
So, obviously, we monitor case law as it comes out, whether it's through our own litigators at the firm or just opinions that we read that come in from the court. If we email each other as a group almost every day, hey, this opinion came out, you need to take a look at this. If it's something that renders an ordinance invalid or unconstitutional, we will contact individually our clients and advise them of that. Now, for most of the cases that come out of the state courts, they're very limited because it's a specific ordinance in a specific community. So just because a court found an ordinance in Birmingham unconstitutional and the village has a similar ordinance, it doesn't necessarily mean that the village's ordinance is unconstitutional. However, we would make you aware of the fact that, hey, a similar ordinance was struck down. The best example I can think of is when I was in Canton, there was a challenge to our tree ordinance. And that went up through the federal courts and through state court. And ultimately, the federal court said a provision, and there's a lot of confusion about that ruling, but the replacement provision of that ordinance was unconstitutional. I mean, the scope of that, the range of that, the impact of that is pretty wide. Most communities that I still work with have not updated their ordinances to address the Canton ruling because it's a Canton Township case. It's not a Village of Beverly Hills case. But I have made lots of clients aware, hey, you know, the replacement provision, you have a similar replacement or you have just a arbitrary replacement provision in your tree ordinance, something similar was struck down in Canton, you might want to consider reworking that or just be aware if you continue to enforce it as is and there's a challenge, there's this existing precedent out there that could potentially cause a problem for you later. So it's keeping up with the law, being aware of what's out there. You know, there's 26, like I said, soon to be 30 of us. We cover pretty much the whole state of Michigan. So we're talking with people everywhere. We're monitoring cases. We just sort of have our finger on the pulse of those kinds of things. add to that? Follow up?
I mean,
I remember that, Canton, when we were actually working on our tree ordinance when that happened.
Mr. George, could I ask a follow-up
Yeah.
to that? So we've talked a lot about monitoring ordinance and monitoring law and case law. Can you give us an example maybe of a time when you've brought to a community an issue that that they don't have ordinance around at all? Like maybe it's a more, emerging issue or something, and you've had to advise them, hey, you really need to work on this, right? So something that comes to us all the time, e-bikes, right? E-scooters, or, and I know obviously when, cannabis came up, right? A lot of communities had to deal with that. So maybe give us a current example of a time where you've had to say, hey guys, here's a policy issue you really need to start wrestling with. Or do you see that as your role to bring us those kinds of policy issues to keep us sort of, on the right path?
Again, through monitoring litigation, we see, and Matt touched on this earlier too, we see things that are coming down the pike. Transitional housing is one that we've talked to a lot of our clients about. You might want to consider, everybody know what that is, the transitional housing? So
Is it
that's,
different than short-term rental?
Like
yes,
sober living
sober
homes,
living
Okay.
homes.
Okay, okay.
That's what transition, so it's like engaging people back into society when they're coming
Okay.
out of treatment. But that has come up, Matt had a huge lawsuit out of Livingston County, Howell?
Yes, yeah.
Livingston
yeah.
County. And that has sort of made us all look at these and talk to a lot of our clients about, if you don't have anything in place to address this, you may have one of these facilities in a place you don't really want it to be.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
nope, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
think the short-term rental example is probably the best example lately, because there are many communities out there that it's really not a problem for them, but you never know when it will be, and many communities don't address the issue in the way that the courts are now looking at it. And so, we present these types of updates to you. I mean, you ultimately decide what to do with them. If it's something very urgent, as you said, if it's very clear that your ordinance is down the wrong path, but, in light of some recent development, we would certainly urge you to take a close look at it. But absolutely, yeah, I think another area that I deal with all the time is sign ordinances. And I know you asked the example of something that you aren't regulating. I know you probably do have some sort of sign ordinance regulations, but you may not be addressing something that these days you should. Or how are your variance procedures? Are they up to standards for the First Amendment purposes versus just your standard zoning purposes? So, those types of things, whether you're regulating it now or not, we would be bringing to your attention. And again, it's kind of like like I said, with the litigations, where we kind of give you on a scale of 0 to 10, what's the priority level here in terms of urgency addressing it, and we'd work through it.
I think I might have a guess how you might answer my question, but based on, short-term rentals and some of the other concepts you brought up, if you had a divide on the council, or a divide between the council and administration, or whatever, and you have common discussions with a select group of individuals from either body or within a body, how do you manage the movement forward? So short-term rentals, say from this side forward, we hate them, that side over, they want nothing but short-term rentals in Beverly Hills. So how do you manage that as a council to a body that can have very divergent opinions?
So certainly from my perspective, and I think we can probably all share this, is when I'm talking to any one of you individually, I want you to know that you're talking to me confidentially. It's not my goal to gossip about what one of you say to another one of your colleagues. I'm interested in having frank conversations with each of you as you desire, which helps give me information to formulate the best legal advice and anticipate where the consensus may be, how to balance the political questions with the legal questions. I'm not going to pick sides. I want to listen to everyone's concern and see if we can find an ordinance that is going to address the need that we have to address legally or to protect ourselves, but also find a policy solution that hopefully will garner a consensus.
And at the end of the day, council has the final say, and you need 4 votes for anything to pass. So if council's divided and you can't get to that majority vote, then it doesn't happen, or it's pulled off the table and massaged and comes back and looking a little bit differently to try to get it to the point where it gets passed.
We're bumping up against it, so any parting shots, questions, quick hits from council before we,
No.
thank you for your time. I appreciate the discussion. I think it was, we had a bunch of questions that we didn't get to, but we got to them by
Kinda did.
having a good
Default.
conversation,
Yeah.
so.
You got
Yeah.
it before we
Yeah.
could.
No, it was good. It's good. If there's any follow-up, we'll let you know, but, my sincere hope is that tonight we don't have follow-up.
Yes, definitely,
Yeah.
thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in. It was good to see you all again.
Yeah, thanks. Good luck for the rest of the night.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey,
Yes.
it's good.
We live here.
Not far.
Yeah, but normally you don't have 3 straight hours of attorneys talking to you.
You know,
We've had 3 straight hours of worse
I'll
things, so.
take that. I'll take it over some of the, yeah.
This won't be billed on us, will it? Just checking.
Specifically to Rockaboot, send you the address.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Good night.
At least it's not like snowing outside or something terrible.
Oh.
Well,
Yeah, you wanna take 2?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I mean, always.
I thought about
Not
it
at once.
also now, you're right.
And we're back. So thank you for taking time out of your evening to come in and see us. Appreciate it very much. So next up, Foster Swift. We've all got names here. We're on council. And then we have a village manager and a village clerk. So kind of know what we do. If you could give us a little introduction on yourselves, and then we've got a bunch of questions prepared. We've learned that it gets rangy and we wind up, we'll bump around, but we're just trying to have a good conversation about how you guys approach it. You don't need to be too precious with that. He said they pick up well, and we're on YouTube, and I assume, I think we'll be fine.
We'll just have good
Yeah,
projection.
yeah.
Okay, well, my name's Courtney Gabarra-Agrusa. I'm a senior attorney with Foster Swift. I've been with the firm for over 2 years now, but I've been practicing in municipal law for over 10 years, in private practice, in-house, or I should say boutique here and in-house. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and meet with you guys. Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm Ann Searing. I've been practicing for 29 years. And my entire career I've been doing municipal law. I have a specialty in the Open Meetings Act and FOIA, which a lot of people don't like FOIA, but I work with a lot of libraries. I'm currently the president of the firm. Our firm's been around since 1902. We've got a very large municipal practice with a number of lawyers. We've got great breadth and depth in that. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to tell you what we can do for you.
Super, thank you. Tracy, you want to start on your
I
end?
will start, yes.
And again, if no one cares, pick, just start wherever, that way we can
Just don't be
bump
repetitive.
around.
Right,
Yeah,
just make sure you
exactly.
keep track, so you
Keep
can-
Keep track, but
Well,
I mean,
I do think our first question's a good warm-up,
Yeah.
so, why don't we start there? We just want to talk about your experience in municipal law. So can you describe your experience providing general counsel to municipalities, particularly in areas such as zoning, land use, contracts, FOIA, Open Meetings Act compliance, and ordinance drafting?
Well, personally, I do, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for 29 years. We do full service work for our municipal clients, so we do ordinance drafting. I do a lot of Freedom of Information Act work, which can include just counseling clients, but it also can include, reviewing all the documents, making all the redactions, preparing the response letters. We do consultation on Open Meetings Act. When we're here, we'll assist in motions and make sure things are in compliance when we're at the meeting. The good thing about our law firm is that we have a very big municipal group. And so I don't personally handle a lot of our things because we have people in that specialty. For example, very complicated like construction contracts and so forth, that Scott Hogan would do that from our office. We have people that do zoning and land use work and drafting of ordinances. I know Courtney does a lot of that. I'll let her speak to that. But we are full service, we have bond attorneys, so even though maybe Courtney and I don't do a specific thing, there are people in our office who can do everything that the village would need.
Yeah, and I would say that my experience is pretty broad brush as well. I mean, I do a lot of the day-to-day ordinance drafting and reviews, resolution drafting and reviews, a lot of consults with planning commissions and things like that, helping with the day-to-day, and just kind of whatever our client really needs, right? I'm not gonna project onto you guys what you might need on a day-to-day basis, but it could be anything from picking up the phone. Today I got a phone call that one of our clients, unfortunately, their building inspector passed away, and they had a question in terms of like, well, how do we pay that person out because they've got a paycheck pending? So it's like all those kind of random miscellaneous day-to-day things on top of the FOIAs, the Open Meetings Act, the participating in meetings and things like that. And I also have a background as a clerk. I was an interim clerk for a brief period, so I went through all the training with the state, and I handle a lot of election issues, recounts, which are really fun. I've advised a lot of election committees and things like that, work closely with law enforcement, so pretty broad brush.
follow-up or anyone good? All right. Next up.
Actually, you know what,
Yeah.
quick follow-up.
Sure.
I just want to make sure, because I'm not sure you stated this, Foster Swift is not just strictly municipal law, though, right?
No,
Okay.
no. We have, we're a full-service
Full
firm.
service, okay.
which is good, because we have litigators, our municipal litigators also litigate, we hope you don't end up in litigation, but if you would, we have people that are experienced not only in litigation, but municipal litigation, appellate work. We also have, an environmental specialty, which, you know, is a specialty in our firm, but it really, it's come in really handy with a lot of our municipal clients, with a lot of the environmental issues that we have. We have, you know, labor and employment attorneys who are specialized in labor and employment law. We have, again, people who have, I think, all different, we have business and tax people, we have all sorts of things, property tax issues. There really isn't anything that our firm hasn't been able to handle in-house. We have
Yeah.
bond attorneys, so, and that's really, I think that's been really good for me, because I can serve our clients. I do a lot of work with the city of St. John's. I can serve our clients by, you know, handing them to somebody who has that expertise. So you're not reinventing the wheel. In our municipal group alone, we have, you know, we have legal opinions, and we have, you know, like I have formed FOIA letters, so that you're not recreating the wheel every time that you have an issue like that. But also because we are so specialized in some other areas, you're not having a general firm that has to come up to speed on these very, like, specific areas of law. So I think that's been a real benefit to our clients.
Yeah, and I think some of you know from having met me via Zoom that my background, I came from a boutique firm before I came to Foster Swift, and Anne's probably heard me say this, and I think I said this to you guys. I had a very, I had a nervous perspective about, like, big law, because I didn't know how I was gonna fit and if it was gonna be intimidating, but it ended up being really wonderful because I had all these resources and wonderful attorneys to turn to. So even though I had my focus of municipal law, I could easily pick up the phone now and tap these resources who were just so willing to help me get a handle on, you know, the bond stuff. You know, I didn't know any of that, and then I got to talk to a couple of our attorneys, and that was really helpful. And it's really nice to have everybody kind of at our fingertips and working together, and it does save us from having to become experts in every area of law for you guys, because we've got those experts built into our firm.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My question is about just the council and board support. How would you approach advising elected and appointed bodies like village council, planning commission, and zoning board of appeals to ensure decisions are both legally sound and practical?
Well, first of all, I already kind of looked at your protocol online beforehand, so it's important for me that you guys designate somebody, unless you guys decide otherwise, but usually you guys will designate somebody who will reach out to us, so that way we know exactly, you know, hey, we got a question from the planning commission, can you put together a legal opinion for us, or are you?
Manager, pointing at the manager.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so it'd be the manager, and you would reach out to me and you'd let me know, hey, we got a question from the planning commission, or hey, we have a question from council, or we have a question from ZBA, and we'll put together either a memo for you, or we'll schedule a call for you guys. We're happy to come in. I'm right down the road. I'm less than 15 minutes from you guys, so I could come in and meet at any time and just walk through any questions. And of course, being available for your meetings. That's obviously really important for us too, is just being there in the day-to-day, you know, functionality of your village, and just helping when you need it. Because a lot of stuff will come up on the fly that you don't expect, and it's nice to have somebody to turn to in the moment and talk it through with. So.
And that's really client-driven, you know, how you want your legal services delivered. We have clients that, some of them, anybody on the board, commissioner, council can call us. Sometimes that gets very expensive, and it raises the issue, like you mentioned, you wanna make sure that you're following what the majority of, because, you know, you guys have a majority, you might not agree on anything, and you wanna make sure that the legal advice is, you know, condoned, or, you know, that we are reached out because the majority of the people really want that. So that would be something we would work with you on, is to, you know, who are those lines of communication? How do you want us to communicate with you? Do you want everything in writing? We do a lot of phone consultation, a lot of emails, but again, the formality of the advice would be something that we would take direction from the client. But we work in all different kinds of environments and situations, so.
And I think the other nice thing that I would just point out is that, like, and I know this came up when we talked on Zoom, but because there's so many of us in our municipal group, like, we always have a backup person. So if you can't reach me in a pinch, but you need some kind of legal opinion or say so, you could reach out to Ann, or you could reach out to Keith, who I mentioned in our proposal. You've got a lot of people you can tap, and you probably didn't see this, but I've got 2 phones. So you can call me, you can text me, you can email me, and we're accessible 24/7. And if you can't reach me in a pinch, you'll always have the backup number for the next person in line to reach out to. So we try to be as accessible and transparent with you guys as possible when we can be. So,
Yeah, and as we get into like a representation of a client, often there'll be one point person in the beginning, and it's our responsibility to make sure that the question or the issue is sent to the right person in our firm. But often, you know, as the relationship develops, you know, I do, like I said, I do a lot of FOIA work. The clerk will often just reach out to me directly because, you know, that's the easiest and most efficient way to do the work. So that will be something that we would, you know, discuss with any client, what's appropriate with those situations, and we work with you on that.
All right. Thank you.
What is your process for reviewing, drafting, and updating local ordinances? And how do you balance legal precision with readability and enforceability?
that's a really good question. When I'm reviewing ordinances, first of all, I want to sit down with you and actually know what you're trying to accomplish with your ordinance, because sometimes, you know, like I just got asked to draft a scooter ordinance, and I was like, well, what kind of scooter ordinance do you like scooters? Do you not like scooters? You can't just tell me you want a scooter ordinance.
Right.
So I like to actually sit down and figure out what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve with your ordinance, and then we could talk about what that would look like, how it would actually be applied if actually adopted, and then we can put something together. And my personal preference is to avoid legalese, but some people like all the, you know, therefores, here to's, all that fun stuff. You don't like it, I know, because you work for the state, so you see it all the time. So,
Well, you know, it depends on, like, let's take a sign ordinance. There's a lot of legal, you know, case law now on signs and what the sign ordinance, so we wanna make sure that the ordinance as drafted, or how you would want it would, you know, stand up to any of those legal challenges to the best that we can. A lot of the stuff we look at are what I would think of business decisions, you know, especially with some of the zoning, like what your setbacks are, and some of those issues are really not legal issues. We just wanna make sure that it's clear and that all the elements of the ordinance are there. Have you thought about this? If, you know, if you talk about setbacks from this line, but you're missing setbacks from another property line, we just wanna make sure it's all consistent.
I'm gonna go to the bottom of the list because I wanna make sure we address it. We've had the same attorney for 40 some odd years, so we don't go through transitions terribly frequently, so I'd like to understand your process for onboarding us as a client, you know, getting to know the professional staff, council, understanding our ordinances, our village charter. What's that look like?
So since I would be the primary, because I'm, you know, right down the road from you all, my goal would essentially be to sit down with everybody at some point, spend a day or so just kind of talking to you guys, getting a sense, well, maybe not a whole day, you might get sick of me, but sitting down with you guys and getting a sense of, okay, what does your day-to-day look like? What are your, you know, I know your policies, right? Because I've looked at the protocol about how do you actually put those policies into motion. So how do you actually function? Like, I just dealt with one of our clients who, you know, they've got a policy, but they don't really follow it in terms of FOIA and how people relay information to their FOIA coordinator. Well, I need to know those things so I can know how to advise you later on. So that's kind of my approach. I like to sit down with you guys in person, not just via Zoom, and just kind of get a sense of the day-to-day. And then, you know, as we go through projects and assignments, you know, we can kind of work through what your preferences are.
And we've been in the situation a number of times where we've, you know, started representing a client that's been with somebody for a long time, been with someone that's retiring, and, you know, we usually like to talk with them and, you know, find out what the issues are that they were working on. But really it is a conversation with the client, making sure that you are, you know, that it is smooth. And the other thing too is we wanna make sure that, you know, projects are ongoing. If there's any transition, sometimes you might keep your attorney to finish out a project. We wanna make sure that that's all taken care of. But again, it's really just making sure that we've covered all your bases, and that because we're a bigger firm, and if you're used to working with one person, then you're gonna start working with multiple people. That's going to be maybe a transition for you too, and we can figure out how that would work. But really, the job is to make your life easier, and we would work with you on that to accomplish that. But we've done it many times.
Super, thank you. Mr. Aboud?
Relationships. So do you typically like get, when you communicate with council, does council like call you and then another person may call you? I'm just trying to figure out how you go about the relationship, not only with council, but what do you think of the hallmark of the relationship between municipal attorney and the Village of Beverly Hills? And then how do you communicate with each individual here? Do they call you? Do you charge us for each call? Things in that nature. I'm just curious.
I think it really just depends. So, you know, we've kind of talked a little bit about cost here and there. So some municipalities say, you know, have at it, call, you know, legal whenever you need to. If you have a question, run it by them. And we're open to that. I don't mind anybody having my number and calling me or texting me or emailing or what have you. But if that's not your preferred process, then I will defer to the village in terms of what they want me to do. And based off of the protocol, I believe it would be going through the manager, but obviously exceptions can be made. So I'm gonna really put that in your court and defer to you guys. I'm never gonna tell you you can't call me, but I will always ask, okay, is this something that needs to be relayed to the board? Is this something that we need to bring the manager in? Is this a bigger issue, or what's going on here that prompted the call? If it's like something that's not maybe in the norm, but I'm never gonna say, please don't ever call me and let me know if there's something going on, because I always wanna make myself available, so.
Thank you.
My turn. So I'm skipping around a little bit, but what strategies do you use to maintain objectivity and professionalism when navigating political or controversial issues in a small community setting?
I'll let you
Well,
take that one.
I've been dealing with this a lot lately, because I represent, one of my other specialties is library law. So I've been doing a lot of, if you've been reading about the book banning, issues, and, my philosophy is I tell the client what the law is. Like, I don't tell you how to feel about this, you know, it's what is the law. It's not my job to, you know, because there's really heated issues on both sides, but if you keep that objectivity, we also, as a law firm, we don't tell the client what they wanna hear. We tell the client what we think our, opinion, you know, what our legal opinion is. We often do things in closed session, because there are political issues, so we tell you what we think, and then you guys can make, you know, a lot of things are not, you know, cut and dry. There's risks, and we're into basically telling you what the risks are. Here's the risks, and then it's, you know, your job, as you know, as far as being on the village council, to assess, you know, how you want to take that advice and then and handle it with your public, because you might be willing to take something to court if you feel very strongly that it's in the best interest of the village, but, you know, other things you might say, look, we don't wanna spend any money on this, this is not something we wanna do, but I try to stay out of the politics of it, because that's not really our role.
Right.
Yeah, I call it the politics behind the politics, and I just try to stay out of it, and I just try to be a listening ear if you need it, but it's really just about giving you what the actual legal opinion is. I mean, sometimes we're gonna agree to disagree, and that's okay. It doesn't hurt my feelings if you don't wanna accept my legal opinion, because you guys know what's best for the village. I'm just here to give you all of your options.
So how in the event that half the council wants one thing, half the council wants another thing, they're both legal, and we're trying to resolve that to get an ordinance or a policy or something drafted and written, how do we go about that?
Well, I would say, I mean, at the end of the day, again, it's a business decision, but we're always willing to work with you. So if it's an ordinance, for example, and there's a language difference, I mean, we can work with you on modifying language until we can find a happy medium, or we just say, here, this is what we think is gonna protect you the best, and then it's up to you guys to decide if that's what you want to adopt or not. I mean, there's no pressure to adopt something at that point if nobody can agree on it, but we're always gonna be here to say, okay, well, if we can't, you know, if we're both so polarized, we can help you find a middle ground, or we can just tell you what we think is the best option, but it's ultimately up to you.
I think it also depends on what the division is about.
True.
You know, I recently worked with a city that had a vicious dog attack on another dog, and so the politics became, shall we regulate dogs, pit bulls in the city? And so if the issue is whether you should regulate pit bulls or not, that's really, you know, there might be a divided council on that, but that's not really something that we would do now if we're asked, okay, is this ordinance provision legal if we wanna do it, you know, if this provision is a little bit more aggressive and maybe we don't know how the courts would handle it, that's something we would probably talk about in closed session so that you guys can get our full advice and understand where the risks are.
And if we had a desire that was, I don't wanna say illegal, but, you know, there's precedent set that says, hey, that's not what is the best practice, but we have something that we'd like to do in that direction. How do you guide us to make sure we're doing something that does maintain a legal precedent, but gets us close to what we want to achieve?
Well, like we would, in a situation like that, my preference would be to meet with all of you in closed session about that legal advice. And give you that legal advice in closed session, because we have met with clients in closed session and given legal advice, and they come out of the closed session and they choose to say, you know, it's usually not like, this is illegal, you will end up in jail if you do this, but it's like, this, you know, if you pass this ordinance, it will likely be found unconstitutional. That's more of the, you know, there's a presumption of constitutionality for your ordinances, but we think if challenged, it would be unconstitutional. I don't want that conveyed to the public, because then
You're
you've just
inviting
passed an ordinance that your lawyer, excuse me, told you was unconstitutional. But that's why we would do it in closed session, so that we could give you that advice, and then you would say, look, we think it's worth the risk, it's very important to this community that we are on the cutting edge of this particular issue, and that's how we typically convey that advice. It can be in writing, it can be in an email, which is as long as it maintains the confidentiality. We just wanna make sure that, I think it's very important that municipal entities have that attorney-client privilege. You'll have a lot of people in the community saying, you're doing stuff behind closed doors, you know, why can't we understand what's going on? But I really feel very strongly about your need to have frank legal advice, because you might decide, look, I understand that you think if we went to court, it's 95% loser, it's only a 5% chance of winner, but we think this is so important for this community that we're willing to take that risk. I don't want that out in the public, and that's typically how we would do it. Now, again, one of the things that I, you know, would like to ask of you at some point is, you know, that you probably have ideas of how you like legal service. There might have been things that you liked about the prior attorney that you would want to continue, things maybe you'd want to change, and so that would be one of the questions we would put back on you. Does that sound like something that works for this, just because this works in other communities, is this something that's going to work for the village? And that's one thing we'd work out, because if you don't like to meet in closed session, some communities do not like to meet in closed session at all, because of the perception of the public on that. So that's one thing that we would really reach out and say, okay, well then how do you want us to convey that very difficult legal advice where you can ask questions back and forth about that legal advice, because we think it's important that everybody understands what the risks are before you make that decision.
Thanks.
Can I just
Yeah.
add to that on this topic? Oftentimes we'll have a political topic and we'll have a resident come in, or even a member, we are not attorneys,
Mhm.
right? And so, or we'll have a member of the public come in and with the charter or an understanding of an ordinance and read it or give their understanding of it, which is not actually correct, which is a difficult situation, because now with Municode, we do have access to it, but in the past we haven't. And so, in those instances, we kind of lean on our counsel to sort of help us say, like, yes, that is correct, or actually this is what it says. And in those situations where we're trying to represent the charter properly or an ordinance properly, how do you help us navigate through that in a political situation with differing opinions over the words?
Oh, I've been to a lot of meetings where community members are not happy about the language in an ordinance, or they're kind of in conflict with what you guys are telling them. Like, you're trying to explain to them the reality of the ordinance and what the implications will be, but they just aren't hearing it. And I think at the end of the day, all our role will be is to say, here's what the ordinance says, here's where it says it. And we're happy to talk to people like on the side and things like that, and explain things to them if you think that would be of service to you. That's not a problem at all. We will I guess aid as much or as little as you want us to in that situation. But we have dealt with that in the past, and we're happy to be a resource to kind of break down what the ordinance is actually trying to say.
And also too, it sort of depends on the context. If you're holding a public hearing on an ordinance where everyone's got the ordinance in front of them and we've had a lot of time to go through it, That's one scenario. Sometimes people come to public comment and they'll want you to instantly, you know, give advice on a particular ordinance, and you might not have had time to review that. And so often then we'll say, you know, that our advice is that we, you know, this is the first time we're hearing it, let's take a step back and like give us an opportunity to review it, and then, you know, whether it's village manager or whatever, to reach out, then that's how we'll do it, or if, you know, whoever you choose to reach out. But sometimes our role is to kind of be the bad guy at the meeting to say, you know, we need some time to look at this, because I think often people come to public comment and it looks like from your minutes, you guys get a lot of public comment. Is that,
Depends on the,
okay?
there are periods of time where we're discussing things that lend themselves to more.
Well, it's like chickens seem like.
Yeah, I saw that.
I read an
The
article
animal
where
one.
someone said that they had chicken fatigue. I thought that was really, you know, so I don't know. But that, it looked like a lot of people came out about that particular issue. But, you know, sometimes it's better just to take a step back and let things calm down and tell them that we'll get back to them. And because I think the worst thing you can do in those situations is give them the wrong interpretation. And you don't want to be wrong, you know, unless there's an emergency where they have to know on the spot. I think usually we just take a step back and say, let us take a look at it, and we'll have the manager reach out.
If one of us were to be sitting at the table and you're here as a representative for a meeting, and we say something in light of stupidity that is not actually what the ordinance says, how is that handled?
I think it just depends. I mean, I try to be very, I would never just, you know, cut the mic and start cutting you off and trying to correct you, but I would maybe, if it was something that was like a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation, I would, you know, I would appropriately raise my hand to get the attention of the president, and I would say, you know, I would just like to correct one thing. I heard this was noted, but I just want to address this very simply. But it's not my job to cut your mic and say, no, you're wrong. I'm going to try to be as respectful as possible and try to address it in a very clear and concise manner, just saying, you know, here we go, and not draw too much attention to it, but just maybe put it out there. But if that's not your preference, I can also refrain from doing that. I've had it where, you know, I'm only to speak when I'm spoken to, and I've had other people where they will defer to me regularly and say, well, what's your take on this, or was that accurate, or can you weigh in on it? So it's really gonna just depend. I'm never gonna project my style onto you guys unless you prefer it.
Yeah, and it also, I think, depends a little bit on the context and what the comment is. I had a situation really recently where the client was going to decide to approve a contract, and one of the commissioners, they asked a question about a provision of the contract, and it was just not, it wasn't correct, and I felt the need to just, you know, just say, hey, you know, my reading of this is, because I just felt they were gonna make a decision on that.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's gonna make a decision on that based on an incorrect statement, I feel, unless I'm specifically told by the client not to speak until spoken to, I will, you know, politely interject and hope that, you know, is okay with the client, because I don't think, you know, you guys are all, you know, serving here, and you know, we don't know everything, you guys don't know everything. I would think that would be better than making a mistake that could then, you know, cause you to feel like, well, I wouldn't have approved the contract if I felt that provision was as stated,
Right.
you know, in the contract versus how it was interpreted at the meeting. So it's kind of a delicate balancing act, but it really depends on if you guys are okay with that sort of interjection. You know, I interject a lot. For example, if I see an Open Meetings Act issue, you know, if we're going to closed session to discuss a confidential legal opinion that's exempt by statute, and, you know, the motions, we're gonna go into executive session, and then someone second, and I, you know, will stop and say, look, the motion should read this, you know, because again, we're trying to correct legal mistakes. But again, you know, lawyers say it depends, and I hate that a lot, but
But
it
it
kinda
does.
depends on what the statement is,
Yeah.
what the context is, you know, and what your style is as far as what you want our role to be.
Yeah, but I would agree with that. Any kind of like rules of procedure when it comes to Robert's rules, you know, if there's something that's blatant, you know, I will try to, you know, get your attention and then respectfully correct that in terms of, you know, actually you're supposed to make this motion, or you're, you know, this is being tabled, let's go on to this. But if you don't want me to speak, then I will try to, you know, communicate in other, you know, manners. Maybe we could message or something on this.
Nah,
We're speaking.
Okay,
Maybe I
good.
could just say.
most of us are, I think I'm, you know, I have no problem talking about what I don't know, and I'd rather not step into a bear trap than to preserve my ego and do that, so
Yeah,
I'm fine
that
getting
leads-
course corrections.
Leads me to my next question, which is, if you're here and we have a legal reference, we ask you, could be anything from like Robert's Rules to policy ordinance or something, interpretation to, how can this fare based on legal interpretation? How would you handle those questions kind of across the array, that we have all kind of needed legal guidance at some point or another in the council meeting?
I'm gonna steal part of Ann's answer and say it's gonna be context driven. So if it's Robert's Rules, I come to every meeting with my Robert's Rules it's the actual Robert's Rules. I come to every meeting with it. It's very worn and torn and loved. So if there's anything that's related to like the parliamentary procedure, I will address it as best I can there. But if it's something policy driven and it's, not on the agenda or something we've had time to prepare, then I might ask for time to go ahead and review and get back to you with the legal opinion and consult with Warren and relay it that way. But if it's something related to the actual agenda item, usually we would be prepared and know what's going on and be able to dialogue with you about that.
Yeah, the tricky part about attorney-client privilege is that it's not our privilege, it's yours. And so it's always really tricky when you get into a situation like this, because sometimes the questions, like with Robert Rules or like an Open Meetings Act question, are like something that are very clear-cut that I
Right.
would say in a seminar, if you were, an answer to a question in a seminar. But if, for example, you asked me a question, and this is one of those things that we would talk about, how you want us to handle it. But if you asked me a question in an open meeting, like, is this constitutional? And my gut reaction is no. I'm
Right.
not gonna say no, or I don't wanna say no unless you, press me to say no, but I would probably have, I don't wanna say a code, but I would probably say something like, give me an opportunity to,
Prepare some guidance for
yeah,
council.
look into it so
whatever
you
it
can,
Yeah.
because there's stuff that we might, I've been doing this a long time, but there's questions that you don't know, very, like, specifics, like if it's about I got asked a question once about a very specific cemetery statute that, I hadn't looked at, and I just might not know it. So there's times where we might not know it, we need to go back, it might be an area of specialty that's not one of ours that we would wanna consult with our specialist. But there's also gonna be instances where we do know the answer, but we just don't wanna tell you in a public setting. That's not we don't wanna waive that privilege for you. So we'd have to work on what that language would look like, that you would know that I was conveying that information to you here, that you don't want me to say this right now.
Yeah,
Before
right.
we've had a chance to talk about it.
And I'll ask my last question, a little bit shift on topic, but somewhat related. There's a legal question that kind of is floating, and maybe Mr. George or somebody else on council says they know what they know, everybody else is an idiot, or Mr. Rosati just says ignore the council, they don't know what they're talking about. Or the council says ignore administration. Not that that ever happens, I'm not saying that happens, I'm just saying in those types of extreme situations, as an example, how would you deal with that? Because we're obviously all up for vote every couple of years. So within 4 years, this whole council could be an entirely set of different people that could be people who show up at the podium all the time and are very dissatisfied. So how would you manage that kind of challenge between, individual opinions or different bodies within our government?
Can I ask for clarification? Are you referring to during a public meeting?
No,
or are you
sorry,
talking about
this is kind of like, we
Oh.
have something coming on the agenda, there's a debate, you come back or you're developing ordinance or policy, and in that development, you're working heavily with the administration to get it drafted, so we can bring it to the council, and there's this maybe disagreement with an individual or between bodies or whatever. I'm just curious how you manage that.
Well, you're gonna deal with so many different personalities in municipal law, and I think we both deal with a lot of different personalities in doing what we do on a daily basis. But it's never anything personal. It's never a personal attack on us or on you guys, and so I think, my job is just to give you the law, to hear what you're trying to say, hear what you're trying to accomplish, and then work with administration to accomplish it to the best of we can. And then if there's something that we need to kind of reconcile with a particular council person, we can sit down with that council person and explain where we're coming from or get a better sense of what they're trying to achieve. But when it comes to the personality dynamic in terms of how decisions are made, How involved you want us to be in navigating that is really gonna just depend on you. I hate that that's
Yeah,
the
well,
default, but.
and, you know, so, like, I'll give you an example, like, I had a situation where I normally work with, like, the manager, let's say, and that's usually how the information is conveyed, but then I understand there's maybe a difference of opinion between the manager and the council. I typically reach out to the president to make sure that we're all on the same page, either independently or I'll suggest a joint meeting, however, would most effectively resolve that situation. Because at the end of the day, our client is, you know, basically the council as a whole, or the majority of the council, you know, so we wanna make sure that our advice is heard by the council, even if it differs maybe from the manager or vice versa, so that everybody's on the same page. But again, a lot of this it's relationship building, and so we have to figure out who you want us to talk to in a situation like this. You know, I hope this doesn't happen ever, you know, here, but, you know, in other situations where you deal with one person and then you might be concerned that information's not getting to everybody, that's a communication issue that we would wanna discuss with you, cause our job is to make sure that all of you have the same information.
I was just dealing with a client recently where it was, they were dealing with an internal employment issue, but every council person had their own nugget of the story, and I was getting only, you know, a little piece of it, and finally we had to have a sit-down meeting where, you know, everybody kind of put their cards on the table. We were able to kind of get a fuller picture of what's been going on, and then we could give you the proper legal advice. But it was interesting because everybody had their little piece of the puzzle, and until we put it together, I mean, it was just getting tense, and once we actually brokered that conversation, the whole situation changed, and we were able to get it resolved so smoothly. It was just night and day, so.
So, I know Foster and Swift, very big firm, you have offices in many different cities in Michigan. You have a lot of specialties, people that know special parts of the law. When you get into intergovernmental contract, or intergovernmental agreements or contracts, there's two pieces. One, what's your approach for negotiating those for us and reviewing those agreements? But also, you represent, or your firm will represent a lot of different other municipalities through other means, meaning not just you get them from the Michigan, is it Murma, right? So they'll be given to you. So how do you handle those conflicts too? So not just the contracts, but also if there are conflicts, how do you handle those? So
Well,
kind of three pieces.
Well, first of all, we run conflict checks, and I do a lot of intergovernmental agreements, so I'm very familiar with kind of the issues that arise with these. But we do conflict checks, and if there's a conflict some conflicts can be waived. You know, it might depend, you know, we might represent, like a municipality on a very particular, maybe an environmental issue, and this intergovernmental agreement is a transit or, you know, library, so it's not, you know, has anything to do with that, and so they have their own separate council. Then we can work, usually those, conflicts can be waived or they can be worked out. There are, and I just don't know around, you know, we'd have to, you know, look around here, but there's some of them can't be waived. We have a general counsel, one of our lawyers is general counsel, and we are very careful about conflicts because we would never want one of our clients to think that we are not giving them the full responsibility. So either those clients, even if they can be waived, we have counsel, you can get your own counsel to make sure that it's appropriate for the waiver. A lot of them, we do represent a lot of municipalities, but it typically hasn't been that big of an issue for us, probably more so in this area. And so but we do work those out. Sometimes we get the waiver and we can, you know, work on it for two clients, but that would really be very specific and very dependent and with everybody's knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just from an agreement standpoint, it really just depends on what the issue is that you guys are trying to negotiate over, and then, you know, what's our stance? What are we trying to achieve with the agreement, right? Because I just got a phone call from one of our clients, and they had an unfortunate accident with their fire department, and so now they're talking to the local, you know, their neighboring communities, and they're trying to reach an interlocal agreement for fire services because they lost their fire department, And so, you know, it really just depends on what the ultimate goal is in that situation, in terms of how aggressive we are in negotiation or what those terms will look like. But we recognize that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to dealing with municipalities, so we make sure all the key terms are in there regardless.
And the one thing too about intergovernmental agreements, and I negotiate, like district library agreements are one that I negotiate a lot, and I think it's very important. I typically represent the library if that's my client, and you know, there's maybe a township attorney and a city attorney, and working with them and making sure that everyone's on the same page and that everyone understands what the ramifications are, because what you don't want, for example, like if you form a district library and they have a millage in effect for 20 years, you can withdraw from the district, but you're gonna still have to pay that millage for 20 years. That's something that we lay on the table for all the parties to understand, like, even though I'm representing the library maybe in that situation, I don't want the city or the township to figure that out 5 years into the contract, because that's not a good relationship going forward. So those are the types of things that we would talk with you about. Hey, this is a piece of information we think everybody should know, even though we're representing you, and to make sure that we have those relationships start out very strong and are not compromised in those types of issues.
All right, thank you.
If you wanna-
Yeah, if I could, a follow-up question. So, we talked about the full services that your firm, offers and that you don't just represent municipalities. Can you tell us about some of the other folks that you might represent that we might find ourselves in negotiation with? Not other municipalities, but like maybe GLEWA or Water Resources Commission, or, you know, these sort of governmental authorities where maybe we're not seeking, you know, mutual aid. Maybe
Okay.
we're, you know, our interests are different.
I can't, I mean, I'm just trying to think
I
of,
can't think of an
I can't
example.
think of an example that
Yeah.
would, like, I know of here.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know, we do represent, a lot of district libraries, which are intergovernmental agreements. We do represent, transportation authorities, a lot of those. We represent, a lot of sewer authorities, and that would be something that we would certainly be happy to share with you if you've got a particular entity that you're concerned about, and making sure that we, you know, there's 100 lawyers, so, you know, for example, I couldn't, you know, if you wanted to get in, you know, sign a contract with a construction company, I might not know until I do a conflict check that one of our lawyers who does construction law represents that construction company. I think with any big firm, that's gonna happen. You get the expertise, but that can happen every once in a while.
Okay.
But we do conflict checks. We have a lawyer that reviews all of the conflict issues, because, like I said, our goal, the last thing we want is for our clients to think we're not, you know, vigorously representing them because of another conflict issue. That doesn't serve you, that doesn't serve us, that doesn't serve another client, so we're very careful about that.
If there's a conflict, what's the resolution approach?
It depends on the conflict. Some of the conflicts can be waived, and some of the conflicts can't be waived. And if the conflicts can't be waived, then we don't represent either party.
Right. Any other follow-up? Yes.
Not so much, I mean, unless we're done with the Q and As, when we're ready for the big hits later,
Yeah.
I just have a thing on conflicts, so.
I mean,
Can we
go
do it
ahead.
now?
It's on your brand.
So, you mentioned conflict of interest, or, let's say a council member has a prior relationship, say trusts and estates. You guys have over 100 attorneys in your firm. We've done some things with them, and let's say we have an item that the council has to vote on, but, oh, wait a minute, I have a previous relationship with this firm, you know, how do you, does it have to be related to the item that we're voting on that would abstain that person, he or she, from voting? Or is it, just kind of tell me how that would work if we have an existing relationship, and then none of us want to be abstained from voting because we think it's a big issue, and, you know, you have to have that 4-3 vote sometimes, right?
So in that scenario, you're saying that you guys would have a personal relationship with the firm in some capacity, or?
One of the council members say has a personal relationship with Foster, right?
Okay. Well,
Foster Swift.
in the estate, example, I would say that there's no conflict
That wouldn't be
would
an
exist
issue.
in that situation, no.
But if it was a municipal issue, then that would be a conflict.
It would really, I guess, just depend on what the conflict was, you know, like, for example, we didn't handle this situation, but for one of our clients, one of their council persons sued the council, right? I mean, obviously, if we had any involvement in that, we would step back. and we would not engage, right? But if it's just like an estate matter or, you know, land acquisition or something simple
Right.
like that, totally
Right. Business matter.
yeah, non-related, it
Okay.
would, yeah.
No issue.
And then if you ever had a question about that, you could relay it to Warren and they could relay it to us,
Yeah.
and then we would be able to look into it a little bit more to see if that exists. Cause there are certain, you know, laws that might come into play that give us pause, but
You
we'll
know,
look into that.
yeah, usually it'd be more personal to you versus the relationship with the firm, you know, like if you hired us to, you know, purchase property and that property is now somehow on the subject, that would be more of a issue, you know, it wouldn't be the relationship issue, it'd be more of a personal issue. That's where we kinda see it come up a lot.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I don't know, and I haven't seen a situation in which we have not, there's been a conflict because of a personal other relationship with our firm. A lot of our clients get to know our firm and they, you know, trust us and that we start doing their personal legal work, and I've never, I can't say it would never happen, I just have not, I don't have
I haven't
any,
seen it.
I haven't seen it yet.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
The last thing I want to touch on before we go to the lightning round or close it up is, one of the things that I think we're dealing with, we talked a little bit earlier about how you work on code, but the fact that we're dealing with is that we have a lot of code that is old, you know? It might be state-of-the-art to be referencing truancy laws from pre-World War II. I don't know, but like some of this I think needs review. Likewise, the charter, you know, we legitimately, Tom took over from the guy who incorporated Beverly Hills. So I mean, we've had, you know, that's the lineage of getting from this not even being Beverly Hills to today as two attorneys. So looking at our charter and saying, do you see things that are not state-of-the-art or not normal in the industry or in the municipal world, you know, that we should be looking at? So, you know, I think code review, look at the charter. You know, we've just got some of those issues that I always think about, what don't we know? Because we have an N of one. Most of us have not been on other councils outside of here. So it's just trying to figure out, you know, your comfort level with that and just guiding us through code reviews. We've switched to Municode, but we've ported a lot of just the existing stuff over. And we've had conversations as we've drafted some code about plain language versus some of what we have from the 60s, you know, so it's.
Yeah, I think it would come down to, so, you know, hoping that our relationship proceeds, right? Then we would sit down together and kind of get a better sense of what projects are outstanding from, you know, prior council, what are some of your priorities, moving forward with our relationship. And then we would try to maybe set up a plan on how to approach it. I would never say, let's do everything at once and overwhelm you guys. I don't know if that's really effective, but we would sit down and kind of go through, what are your priorities? How can we achieve this in a reasonable manner? And then we would take it from there. So if maybe you say our priorities are charter because it's so dated and we really just want to make sure that that's up to snuff and, you know, let's get on board with that, then that would be our priority too. And then we would make sure everything in there aligns. But it really just depends, you know, we have a lot of municipalities, like I just dealt with a village where they just overhauled everything. And they said, let's just do it, we're gonna do it, we're gonna tear off the Band-Aid, let's overhaul all of our ordinances. And they, you know, they repealed a bunch of them and they had me review a bunch of them and that worked for them. But that might not work for you guys, so it might be more incremental and prioritized based off of whatever, you know, is the hot issue for you to address. And then I can give my legal opinion of, well, maybe we also want to address this, you know what, this has been a big issue recently, and we know it's been under scrutiny, so maybe we should give this another set of eyes, just to be sure, because we know people have been looking at it, like tree ordinances have been under a lot of scrutiny, sign ordinances are always, you know, catching people's eyes, right? So, you know, we would talk through that with you guys and prioritize.
Isn't that what signs are supposed to do?
I'm sorry?
Catch your eye?
Catch your eye, you caught it.
That's the problem. We got a couple that are too
I have a couple
eye-catching.
jokes in there that I can slide in for you.
The time change is not caught up with
Yeah.
him yet. Still on it.
So if I could ask a question and kind of complement to that is, how do you handle new issues, like arising issues like e-scooters is a thing around here that's growing public attention because you have 12-year-olds going 20 miles an hour on sidewalks, right, and things like that. So, you know, how do you help us move forward into the future, in addition to correct the past, because the past obviously needs to evolve. But how do you also make sure we stay compliant and pay attention to changing norms in kind of policy for small municipalities like ours?
Well, I would say first and foremost, we track, legislation on a regular basis. I mean, most of us are tracking it daily just to kind of see what's on the agenda and what's gonna maybe be, impacting our clients. So scooters are very near and dear to me because I've been dealing with the scooter ordinance recently and trying to get the right balance there in terms of regulation. But I'll switch from ordinances and I'll give you a policy because ESTA has been my baby recently. So everybody's been dealing with ESTA. That's not ordinance related, but we monitored that from the very beginning and we tracked it and we worked with our clients to, we gave them updates on timelines, like, hey, it's gonna, get adopted probably around this time, you're gonna need the policy by this time, and we monitored everything, as it was coming through the legislation. We were, sending out e-blasts to people saying, hey, make sure you're keeping an eye on this. If you haven't started preparing a policy, start doing so, or reach out to us, we'll assist you with that policy. And then in the cover of the night, ESTA went into effect, they changed all of the language, and they, adopted language that was, hadn't been touched since like early January. And so all of the policies we had done for our clients needed to be updated, out of nowhere. And so we worked with them and we said, hey, there was a change in the legislation. The policies we drafted for you need updating already. So we worked with them on that. And we didn't leave them in the dark. We didn't wait for them to reach out to us. We let them know right away. We let all of our clients, whether or not they used a policy from us, hey, here's what you need to be doing. Here are the changes. And we monitored it, and we continued to send out e-blasts and, articles on our website, and we did webinars, and we try to be very transparent about what's coming down the pipeline for our clients. We don't really hide the ball on that kind of stuff and wait for you to come to us.
And it also depends on the client, right? Like, one of our clients had golf carts was the big thing,
Yeah.
And I could see golf carts being a bigger thing in a community like this than maybe in one of our rural townships. So, but we're not afraid to be on the forefront of things. It was several years ago, it was drones. I think we drafted one of the first drone ordinances because people were flying drones over other people's property and those kinds of things. So we don't shy away from being out there and being the first one to draft an ordinance. But it also really depends on the community. Like, I might not take a scooter ordinance to one of our rural townships, up north, because they might not be interested in that. So it's just kind of figuring out what kind of issues are in your community, what types of things are people upset about, and then making sure that those type of topics are top of mind when we are working with you to suggest those maybe changes.
In light of looking ignorant, what does ESTA stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Earned Sick Time Act.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's been,
Gotcha.
On the forefront. If you guys don't have a policy, please get a policy in place. You need one. Actually, you need one effective February
But
21st.
but I subscribe to the Michigan legislature site where every topic, all the bills that are introduced under certain topics, we're just kind of waiting. They do Open Meetings Act almost every session with different things for virtual meetings, so we'll send out, if that ever comes into law, we'll be like informing our clients of that, where we'd like to be on top of that, those types of things.
And I think you covered it earlier, but just to refresh through the conversation, when you come on, are you going to do like an inventory review of how compliant we are legally? Given the example you just provided, I mean,
In
do you
terms of
do
like
any?
policies and procedures?
Yeah, like do you go through our, because I remember reading something about body cams, and there was a ruling out on the west side or something of the state where there's a big problem because they didn't have the right policy in place, and the way they were storing the data and things like that were a problem. And we now have body cams for our officers. So do you go through and make sure everything we're doing is legit when you come in?
If that's one of the priorities for you, is to have us sit down and go through your policies and kind of tell you where there's room for improvement, we're happy to do that. Some municipalities prefer to take a first crack at it, like I'm dealing with one client right now, where they're doing like the first crack at it, they've made their proposed changes, and then they're having me go through it, right? Or some people would prefer that I take a glance at it and kind of give them an estimate of how much time it might take, or so that they can kind of budget and then prioritize it later on down the line if they don't think it needs a lot of improvement. So it really just depends, but if it's a priority to you, it will be a priority.
For us to like go through and do an inventory, we can certainly do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I just have one other kind of follow-up on all that. It kind of sparked my thought when you were talking about the drone and the, golf cart. But, you know, these are things that maybe we've experienced, but we didn't even know that there was an opportunity to have an ordinance, and we may not want an ordinance, but maybe, you know, we do. So as you're working through some of these things in other communities, do you give updates, like here's a list of some of the topics we're working out, you know, that are in other communities statewide, whether it's golf carts or drones or, short-term rentals or whatever, and just to see if it is a policy that I guess the thing is, we may not even know it's
What we
something
don't know.
that we should be talking about, but like, yeah, I have drones flying over my house all the time, it drives me crazy, like, I didn't know that, you know, so.
Right.
The sort of those situations where other communities are talking about an ordinance and, you know, it may be something you wanna put on your list.
And if that's certainly what you want, you know, some clients, you know, want us to be responsive to, they ask us a question, we respond, you know, but we try to be as proactive as possible. Like my library clients are very policy, they don't have ordinance authority, so they're policy driven. If I get a new client, I send them a list of like the model policies that our firm offers to see if what they, you know, some of them they want, some of them they don't want. But we do try to be, through our e-blasts, and we try to be very, you know, on the cutting edge of these new things. But we would get to know you as a client, figure out what types of issues you might be interested in. You guys are very, very, you know, dense community, and so drones, scooters, you know, sometimes you don't know if you need it until there's an issue, and that's what happened in a community with this pit bull ordinance. Like, everything was fine until a pit bull, you know, moved into the neighborhood and almost killed another dog. So some of the stuff that, you know, we might not think that, you know, maybe it's necessary, but that might become a huge political issue for you. Those are the kinds of things we need to kind of get to know you as a client and figure out what are your priorities and what are the types of things, you know, seems to me in a community like this, things that would affect, you know, more of a dense population, like the scooters and the drones would be priorities, and we would keep you up to date on things that we see in other communities that would be helpful to
Yeah.
you.
That's good to know.
All right, anything else? We're bumping up against it. So.
One last quick
Sure,
follow-up. My question is regarding the relationship, the potential relationships that we would have is general counsel, or people have been saying GC, right? But can you give me an example what would trigger special counsel where it would trigger different kind of rates?
Well, different kinds of rates, you said. I think our proposal, I think everything is based off of our standard rate. So I think
Hourly
we
rate,
only
right.
have two situations where rates would vary, and that would be if it's like a tax tribunal matter, right? Because that's a little bit more intensive and specialized. And then if maybe we trickle into litigation or like a specific labor and employment matter. But everything else is gonna stay at the same
So
rate.
bonds too,
Yeah, yeah.
bonds are priced, you know, the practice of bonds is priced by the size of the bond versus the hourly rate, so. We don't like sticker shock, and we don't like anything like that, so those are certainly things that we would have conversations about what the rates are, you know, we give estimates, those types of things. Sometimes you can't estimate it, like, you know, we don't really know what we're gonna uncover, but I don't like it when a client gets a bill that they're unhappy with, cause that's not gonna be a good relationship, so
Right.
anything to do with rates and that, we can certainly talk about.
Perfect, thank you. That's all.
Anything else?
No?
If
No.
not, thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
hope is to make a decision quickly.
Okay, thank you for the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
It was nice to see. Thank you.
Right.
In person.
And for traveling from the west side or no?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I
thank you.
travel, this is my second time this week over this side, so.
Well, thank
She's
you.
a road warrior,
Yeah.
she really is.
I love
Love I-96.
books on tape, or not on
There you
tape
go.
anymore, but
Right.
audio books.
West side of the state or west side of the region?
It was GR, right?
State, I'm in GR,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Well, safe travels.
You drive
Thank
safe?
you for your time
At
tonight,
least the
ladies.
weather's not
It's so
horrible
beautiful
tonight.
over there. At least it's not, now Monday, you guys are gonna have a little,
Yeah, that might be
Snow,
a little
actually.
rough, it's supposed to
by
be.
the way.
You know, I
Don't be
sometimes I
traveling.
don't look too far into
All right, we're back. Thank you for coming to join us late in the evening. We're not on Zoom. We do have a massive, YouTube audience watching live, probably 2 people, maybe. But preserving it for posterity so that people can watch it later. Thank you for coming in, being able to start late. We appreciate it. We are, from a timeline standpoint, hoping to make a decision fairly quickly. We're, Mr. Ryan has been with us for 40 whatever years, so, well, I was just saying to the last group that he took over for the person who incorporated Beverly Hills, so we don't have a long list of attorneys that got us from not being Beverly Hills to today. So we've got some questions prepared. We got our names out here, so you kind of know who we are. So if you want to introduce yourselves, that would help get us kicked off, and then we'll kind of run through some questions and have a good conversation, hopefully.
Sure, I'll jump in. My name's Dan Kelly. I'm the founder and president of the Kelly Firm.
All right.
My name is Brittany Ellis, and I have been with the Kelly Firm for 7 years now.
All right. Who wants to start? I did both ends, so Mr. Mercer.
Sure. I'm just going to start with a hopefully pretty easy general question on kind of your experience providing general counsel for municipalities. Maybe talk a little bit about zoning, land use, contracts,
Sure.
FOIA, Open Meetings Act, things like that, just those general items. I know it's a big group of things, but just what you've done and how you would kind of handle it for us.
Sure. Well, I'll jump in and I'll let Brittany hop in as well. I've been an attorney for 35 years, all of which has been in the public sector. Early on, I did some school work, but I'm exclusively now doing municipal work. I was for 26 years with a larger firm, Detroit area firm, about 70 lawyers. I was on their board of directors for 15 years, and I was chair of their municipal department for about 10. I started the firm just about 7.5 years ago. Started with myself. Luckily, I hired Brittany about 3 months after starting the firm. And we're up to 8 attorneys, and we have roughly 15 clients. But we do 100% municipal. We don't do anything else. We don't do schools. We don't do insurance companies. We don't do developers, corporations, nothing. We might do a family member's divorce every now and then, probably for free too, by the way. But we are exclusively municipal. When I hire lawyers, and we've had to hire quite a few lawyers because we're growing, primarily a lot of this has to do with Brittany. You will find out if you get the chance that she's probably, I think, one of the preeminent real estate zoning and development lawyers on the municipal side. So I'm going to let her address some of that. But when we hire people, the first question I ask are you interested in municipal? Because, night meetings like this is part of that job. But we want to hire people that are interested in municipal, interested in this whole thing that all of you are doing, probably for not much money, but public service. I myself have sat on boards for 24 years. So I've been in that seat many times at the local level, the county level, and the state level. And so this is something that I love. I know Brittany loves it, and that's why, the attorneys, everyone in our firm has that commitment to representing public entities. So the specifics of it, we can talk about, but there's nothing that you haven't said that we don't do on literally a weekly basis. Zoning, ordinances, contract reviews, FOIAs, litigation matters. That's all we do every day. So I'll let Brittany talk a little bit about the zoning, which she's pretty good at.
I mean, specifically this week, I've negotiated a planned unit development agreement. I have drafted a regulation for e-bikes on Safety Pass, which has become a interesting and pressing issue in some municipalities. As Mr. Kelly indicated, we deal with zoning issues all the time. I had several questions today on conditional rezonings. I had a question today on existing non-conforming use. So those are issues that we're really used to seeing, and we deal with them week in and week out. We are, constantly getting questions about planning, land use, zoning, and then of course doing the side of dealing with developers of site plan review, advising planning commissions from start to finish, the whole package.
Great. Thank you.
Want to go?
Sure. Are we jumping around?
Do what you want. It's after 9. There are no rules. We found, we got a list of questions, but we found they kind of cross over, and so it's like you hit some, you're probably crossing off others, and you go back and.
I'm just gonna jump to my favorite, so.
Yeah.
What strategies do you use to maintain objectivity and professionalism when navigating political or controversial issues in a small community setting like ours?
Right, sure. So it comes, I think, mainly from experience, having dealt with it. And as I said, Brittany sat on a public board. I've been on a public board for 24 years. There's always politics involved in almost every question, resident input and so forth. But what you really want from us is our honest interpretation of the law. That's our part in the game, if you will. Now, do we talk to council members? Do we try to find out, okay, council members have a certain passion for a certain issue? Yeah, that's fine, but when it comes to us, what we're trying to tell you is, this is what you can do with the law. The rest of it is a policy decision for the council, and it's to be decided by basically a majority of the council. And so it sounds difficult, because sometimes you're getting pressure from sometimes the administration, sometimes from particular council members. But if you stick to what our job is, which is to give good legal advice, you can kind of navigate yourself through some of those obstacles.
So how would you develop a policy or an ordinance or something like that that has that type of fracture on the council, or even disconnect between the council and administration?
Sure. Well, first of all, we always recognize that it's up to the council to make those policy decisions. Now let's say there's a controversial issue, whatever it might be. We've done a little bit look through on your recent meetings. I know you have a chicken issue or an animal ordinance issue. We've done 3 or 4 of those for our different communities, and they're all varying degrees. What we try to do is keep you in the guidelines, right, of what's legal. And if you go too far, it's our job, it's not our job to say whether you should have chickens or not have chickens or regulate them or not. Our job is to say, this is how far you can go in regulating them and not regulating them. So that's what our job is, and not to get into the fray of trying to tell you what to do. So if you stick to that, I'm not gonna say it's easy, because sometimes people are pressuring you, but that's the best way to do it. And most of the time, we talk about this all the time, about trust, right? Particularly when we're dealing with council members that in some cases are part-time, right? And they're not into the day-to-day. Every one of you have to trust us that we're giving you honest advice, period. That we're not trying to phrase it in a way that helps the administration sometimes or helps a particular group of the council. We just have to be trusted by all of you, and the best way to do it is to be honest with you about what our real opinions are. That's the best way to do it.
And in the area of a gray opinion, like you said, there's bounds to the legality of something, but then there's a lot of gray area around that about the decisions that we might have to make. How do you balance that? Do you just stay out of it? Do you give guidance? I mean, how do you prevent the impression of bias?
Yeah, look, I have a lot of discussions depending upon the relationship I have, whether it's with, a mayor, whether it's with council members, whether it's with managers, about, the political impact of a decision. A lot of discussions, and I've been around it for 35 plus years, sat on boards, So I have a pretty good sense of what residents will think. I'll offer my opinions, but I'm not a decision maker in that. So in gray areas, I try to help people point out, have you thought about this? I mean, if you're gonna go down this road, you know, the people that don't want tax increases are gonna be upset. If you're gonna go down this road, you're gonna have this other group that's upset. No, I mean, a lot of times you're gonna have already thought that through, but sometimes I can offer that insight. That's not necessarily legal advice. It's a little bit more of political advice, and that's just experience. But I don't view that as my job. That's just based upon the relationships that I that I develop with, people in every community that we represent.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Some of our ordinances, this is regarding ordinance drafting and codes, and we've been updating our ordinances and codes with Muni Code now. Knowing that we're a home rule, as far as the leeway or advantages of being a home rule village, things like, what is the process of reviewing, drafting, interpretation, and updating local ordinances? And then how do you balance legal precision with readability and enforceability?
Let me just, I don't want to dominate the interview, I want you to get to know Brittany too. So, I like what you said there, readability is really important to us, right? Because sometimes it can get so legalese. You're bound by charters and the state laws. So whatever that ordinance is, we've got those to deal with. But making sure that it's language that the public and the residents can understand, and not make it so that it looks so fancy like legalese. Our goal is to make it as clear, and our opinions are that way as well. And Brittany knows this, everyone in my firm is encouraged to clearly state what your opinion is, because you'd be surprised at how many lawyers will write 3 or 5 pages that are if this, maybe that, if that, maybe this. And at the end of the day, what you really just want is our honest opinion, and everybody's so nervous about either malpractice or getting fired that they mumble jumble it. And I think it's the same thing with ordinances. If the goal of the council is to set a rule, then state it very clearly in your ordinances, assuming that it's consistent with your charter, the Home Rule Act, and the laws that apply to it. State it, and don't add a word that doesn't need to be there. If you want may or shall, make a decision, you want may or shall. Sometimes it's better to have may, sometimes it's better to have shall. So we're very in tune to that, and again, I think it's one of the benefits of the fact that that's all we do is, all day, is municipal work. So we're very sensitive to when you read a paragraph, does it say may or does it say shall? Because that's a huge impact on how that thing's read. So.
I would say process-wise as well, generally when we submit an ordinance, at least for first reading, we'll include a cover page letter that will explain the ordinance in pretty simple terms, go through, enforcement and remedies under that ordinance, what we're regulating, and we'll also include a motion to approve your first reading and second reading generally. So what you get is you get an ordinance, you get a really nice concise summary, and you have a motion right in your packet. If that's what, we have a lot of boards who kind of appreciate that. We go the extra mile. We're never just gonna send you an ordinance and say, read these 30 pages, good luck. So we kind of assist in, the explanation and getting you set up as well when you're sitting there with the ordinance in front of you in a 200-page board packet.
Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, this isn't something we do every day, or have not done in quite a while. So transition and understanding how you get to know a community it would be appreciated to kind of hear your thoughts on how you address that. Not discounting the fact you could speak individually with any member of council. Most of your interaction is going to be through administration, whether it's the manager, if it's the clerk on questions of legality on issues related to the functions of the clerk, or if it's planning and zoning, kind of understanding how we like to do business, and then additionally, just, you know, getting to know our code and our charter, I guess. So if you can speak to that, I think that would be helpful.
Go for it,
All
and then
right.
I'll add anything.
You know, understanding the charter and the
Right.
code is probably the easiest part.
Yeah.
Looked at it over the last couple of days a little bit, there doesn't seem, I mean, probably does need some updating. Some of these older well, not charters so much, but the codes. But that's the easy part. What you said was understanding the community, which, you know, I'm very interested in and very sensitive to, because every community is different. And in a lot of ways, that's why I love this work, is because we get to go really across the tri-county area, and every community is somewhat different. And so, you know, when the residents show up, that's what kind of, for me anyway, that's what makes it exciting. So we have to, and we don't know it. I mean, our offices are in Royal Oak. I have a general understanding of the area. It's a beautiful area. But to actually get to know who are the involved residents, because sometimes the involved residents are not necessarily representative of the entire community, right? I have a couple of clients where the community is very much, you know, different than the people that show up every council meeting and or board meeting. So it just takes time, and it takes an interest. You know, if we get hired, we're gonna read every story in the newspapers about Beverly Hills. And of course, I think most of you are gonna fill us in on really what the community's about. So it's something that, you know, I think I enjoy doing and Brittany enjoys doing. We get to know our communities, there's no doubt.
I would just add, we do generally have a personal touch with our clients. As Mr. Kelly indicated, we really enjoy this work. So if you were to call any of our references, they would tell you that we have a relationship with pretty much every single board member. If you did hire us, you would all have our cell phones.
Right.
You can call us anytime. You can see us as much as you want. If you want to meet with us, and likewise, we always have, you know, we work to build those relationships with administration as well.
Okay. Who would be our, who would get the plaque to hear for the meetings?
I think, do you mean the communications?
No, I'm saying we need a button and chair, you know, for meetings.
Oh,
So-
I see. Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're trying to figure out who's the
So-
day-to-day, like, who's
Yeah.
gonna be the main point? Is that you?
It would, I mean,
okay.
be me, yes.
Yeah. You know, Monday and Tuesday nights, and you are the first and third? Yeah.
Tuesday, first
night.
and third.
So it's our busiest 2 nights, right? We've got 15 clients now, so we move it around a little bit. We kind of have designated experts too, so, and I don't know how much labor issues, you might have separate labor council.
Currently,
okay,
yes.
Yeah. But HR issues come up, we have an attorney who's designated just solely HR and labor. So we kind of do pass it around and work with you. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy with any of the attorneys, including myself,
Right.
we're gonna get you somebody else to sit in the chair.
Okay.
And I've known Tom Ryan for 35 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good friend,
yeah.
does mediations for us all the time in other matters, so.
All right, super.
Municipal operations often require timely legal input. How do you ensure responsiveness while maintaining accuracy and thoroughness in your legal review, especially like on an issue you may not be familiar with or have big experience in?
So,
Yeah,
we love
go
this
ahead.
question because we feel we're very responsive. First of all, if anyone emails us, we will respond within 24 hours, and generally what you'll get with that is, if it's a more complex legal question, we'll let you know how much time we think we need to review, and we'll give you a definite timeline, and work with you on your timelines as well, when you need that assignment back. What I will say is that the benefit you get of a firm that solely does municipal law is that we see a lot of the same or similar issues. So generally, we can advise pretty quickly. Sometimes you guys surprise us, and we'll get something we haven't seen before. But I would say that probably one of our strongest points is our response time. And if you checked with any of our references, they would support that as well. We're very responsive.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit to it, because I think it's actually our greatest benefit. As Brittany said, And by the way, it's Dan, it's not Mr. Kelly. Is that we do turn things around. Not only that, but we kind of understand like council and board meetings, the kind of the rhythm of it. So your packet's going to be prepared on the Thursday or Friday before the Tuesday meeting. That's what all our clients deal with. So we have that date in our mind for all of our clients. Their packet needs to be done that day. And we know that the day before, we may get a call to do a quick legal opinion, and that's just what we do on a day-to-day. I'll give you an example. It's kind of maybe a sad, weird case, but in Auburn Hills, which is a client of ours, you might have read it in the newspaper, but we had an election on Tuesday. Well, one of the candidates on Sunday night suffered a very serious heart attack, and we were advised in advance that he might not make it, and sure enough, on election day, he was on machines. After the election, they pulled the plug and he passed away that night, sadly, but he actually won the election. And so we immediately knew that come Wednesday morning, we're gonna get a flurry of questions, right? Well, what do we do now? And literally, Wednesday morning, I did the opinion that said, okay, these are your next steps. So we know that when some things get elevated, they gotta go to the top, because the council needs an answer, and they need an answer now because the press is calling, or whatever the case may be. And so we have that ability. We drop everything, and that opinion went out by 11 o'clock Wednesday morning. So.
I did just see that today, and it was,
Very sad.
also, I did not know that Brian Marzolf was the mayor.
Yeah, he
there.
is.
So we know Brian, he helped
Okay.
us acquire a park.
Yeah, he's very, 6 Rivers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is sad.
Yeah.
And, well, I won't go belabor it, but he had tried to win 3 times. His life goal was to be on the council. He was our chair of the planning commission for 12 years.
Wow.
Great guy. Brittany was just talking, she did a training for the planning commission, and he was robust. He asked most of the questions just a couple of weeks ago. It was crazy, so.
All right. Yes.
I'm gonna ask about legal risk management. How do you approach helping a municipality avoid litigation? And furthermore, when litigation does arise, what is your general strategy for defending the village?
Sure. So in that 25 or 35-year career, probably the first 20 years of my career was almost exclusively litigation. That's all I did, right? And I think that's the best way to learn of what is truly a risk and what's a perceived risk. So many times, I don't want to criticize lawyers, but if you haven't been through it, I don't think you really understand it until you've been through it, right? So the best advice on risk management is, I believe, from an experienced lawyer who's been through litigation, who understands the difference between real risk and perceived risk. Because everything has perceived risk. And if you just operate on the basis of perceived risk, you'll never get anything done, because your lawyer will always be telling you, well, be careful, you can't really, I wouldn't go that far, I wouldn't go that far. Well, every council wants to accomplish things, right? And so my relationship with the other clients that I have, Brittany's getting there, for litigation purposes, I'm saying, is let's have an honest discussion about how much risk you're willing to accept. That's really it's not zero risk, it's how much risk. And at the end of the day, if you lose everything in this issue, what is it really going to cost you? So I think that's my approach to things. Yes, you always want to avoid litigation, but sometimes it's unavoidable. And we're not talking about tort cases where somebody slipped and fall. We're talking about whether or not you want to get something done that you think is really important, and it is a gray area. And so you have to say, okay, if we take this position, even though it is gray area and it's not yes or no, what is the real downside of it? And that's what we try to tell you, which is in part based upon experience, in part based upon knowing how municipalities and the courts treat municipalities. If that hopefully answers
Yeah, so, so Dan, it sounds like you spent a good amount of your career at a large firm,
Yes.
right? And then started your own firm, you guys are growing. What is your best pitch for a small, I don't know if boutique firm is the right word for a firm of your size, but for a smaller firm versus, you know, I mean, it's no secret who else we're interviewing, right? We're
Oh, yeah,
interviewing the other
sure.
two big firms that do this work, so
Sure.
what's the best pitch?
Okay, first things, I think we're competitively priced. I think we're also more nimble than the larger firms. And I would somewhat, you know, I don't criticize other law firms, but pull back the cover a little bit on what you perceive to be a big law firm, because I was in a 70-person law firm. The municipal department was actually smaller than my law firm right now. But I did plenty of interviews where in the packet, I'd put 70 resumes. It'd be a big packet like that, when in reality, I knew there's only really 7 or 8 of us that are actually doing municipal work 100% of the time in the firm. So it's not really what sometimes it is perceived to be. The second part of it is, unlike some of the other so-called municipal law firms, what I said at the very beginning is very important to me. We don't represent your insurance companies. We don't represent developers, corporations, or anyone that would have a conflict with you. That may not sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal to me because I don't go after that work. I get called by developers all the time, you know, in a lot of ways because, hey, we really like what Brittany did. Would you help us in this other community? And we say no. The same is true for the insurance companies that represent all of our communities. We don't do their work because in my mind, it represents a conflict. And what I want to represent are local communities. That's what we're about. So I'm not afraid to say that we can provide better service than the 200-man law firm or 100-person law firm, because I kind of know a little bit about how those firms operate. And in fact, they're all just cells of a whole bunch of different law firms. So.
Thank you
hopefully
for
that's
that.
not
I
too
appreciate your
critical.
candor.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Thank you.
One follow-up question on that. So in the range of clients that you will represent,
Mhm.
what about these sort of governmental authorities? You know, like work for, you know, the sewer authority or the Water Resources Commission. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure GLEWA's got an army of lawyers, but, you know, I
Sure.
mean, we might find ourselves in negotiations with, you know, I mean, sometimes we're trying to negotiate, you know, something where we're on the same side, we're trying to collaborate with other municipalities, mutual aid or something, but sometimes we're on the other side of a table with, you know, a governmental authority or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you guys represent those sorts of
The only one we have that would
quasi-governmental?
Yeah, well, it's not quasi, it
Yeah,
would
it's
be the
true.
Water Resource Commission. We've got one case with them right now.
Okay.
So it's not a huge issue. And with Pontiac, we have had a couple of WRC issues with Pontiac. They're not really contentious or adversarial, but we don't handle them. So, and WRC will have a list of, probably all the law firms that you reviewed are on their list. We've got 1 or 2 cases from them, possibly. One's to obtain an easement. What was the other one, I think?
Lake Board Appeal.
Oh, a Lake Board Appeal. So it's not a big part of our business, and if WRC is involved in any of our clients, we don't take any cases involving WRC,
Okay. All right.
so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We deal with matters of, not as much, well, I guess if you could speak to your experience with helping us not only educate council, but also the community on issues of the Open Meetings Act, and FOIA. You know, there are issues that cause conversations around that, and I think having a regular cadence of updating councils as councils refresh and the community as is necessary. I don't care if it's something that we do once in tape so that we can put it back out there, but I think having some education around that would be helpful. So I don't know if you have any experience
Sure.
in
We
that?
do.
Yeah.
So Dan referenced earlier that I had just done a training for the ZBA and Planning Commission at Auburn Hills. That was our Open Meetings Act and Meeting Decorum training. That's probably our most popular training. I give that training probably to ZBAs, Planning Commissions, and boards. All of our communities, probably at least once every 2 years, I make the rounds.
Right,
As you indicated, you get new board members in, new commission members in, and they want a refresher. So that's something we're very familiar with. We have all the training materials to give you, and we are always looking for legislative updates, so that we can keep our boards updated. That's important to us.
right,
On the FOIA, we deal with FOIA every single week. We get a
Right.
question about, and we actually have an attorney in our office, Jake Mertaz, and he is, we call him our FOIA guy because he is kind of our FOIA expert and he fields all those questions. Also, he would be very willing and qualified to do a training on FOIA.
okay. Super.
Kind of building on that, kind of not, we have a charter that has been around for a very long time. We are not attorneys sitting back here, and sometimes we make mistakes in our understanding of the charter in a meeting, or there's been some more politically charged conversations in the community where a member of the community will come up and reference the charter and what is or isn't allowed procedurally or policy-wise in the charter in a public comment, and it may not actually be correct. And sometimes when we're in those situations, we're kind of scrambling, trying to find what the truth in the charter is. And so in those instances where humans are being humans in an emotional topic, how do you help us navigate that as a community to make sure that the charter is being represented properly in those communications?
I think either of us could handle it, because we do it all the time. We deal with, I think we represent 5 cities that all have their individual charters. Townships are a little different, they have a charter act. But we're asked to interpret charter all the time. As I said, the sad case in Auburn Hills, just on yesterday morning, was solely a charter interpretation. Now, to be able to do it on the fly, I get into more trouble doing that. In the middle of a council meeting, I'll get a question, and I don't get into trouble, but I have a tendency to say what I think the answer is. Because whatever, once I've been here for a while, I'm gonna know your charter inside and out, because we'll have had to read it so often. So a lot of times, that'll help. If I'm at the meeting, if it's a resident misinterpretation, we can help correct that. I'm pretty level-headed about that. I'm not arrogant when talking with residents, because they need to be helped along, and you give everybody the benefit of the doubt that there's a good faith attempt here to understand the charter. Charters can be sometimes very old, very difficult to interpret, and it's not clear. And you're gonna end up with some gray areas there. But, there's some principles that we apply to interpret, whether it's the code, the charter, or state law. And so, we're pretty good at helping you do that. But that's one of our primary jobs, as I said earlier, is to help you with what is our best opinion of what the right interpretation is. You can disregard it. I tell people and clients that all the time. This is our best interpretation. You don't have to follow it.
And
So,
if we're sitting in that seat, we'll have the charter open. Of course, sometimes there's not always things you can answer on the fly, but as we receive procedural questions and we look at your charter over and over and over again, we get a pretty good idea of what your charter says, and then even once I look at your zoning ordinance and do 10 site plan reviews, like, we can start reciting that a little bit off the top of our heads. It takes some time. But I would say that procedurally, we keep meetings moving along because we're usually pretty on top of what your bylaws or your charter says. We might not know the answer every single time, but I think that will develop if you go with us.
Mr. Church, can I ask a follow-up?
Go right ahead.
And bear with me, because I'm trying to pull a thought together, and it's getting late. So I'm thinking about some experience we've had at the council table where, you know, there's an issue that we're dealing with, and certain members of our public were adamant, and frankly, some members of our council were adamant that one of our council members was conflicted, right? And just to give you the cliff notes on it, we had a ex-council member that was donating a piece of property to this was the Six Rivers thing that you referenced, right? A council member that was trying to donate a piece of property to the community, and there's all of this question about, well, what does the charter really say about, I'm gonna get the words wrong, guys, but
Public
about.
benefit.
Yeah,
I
what
think
is
the
public benefit
phrase.
and
Yeah.
entering into a contract with the community, and there was a big demand in those conversations to just get clarity, right? And so
Right.
I recognize the risk of talking off the fly, but there's also a risk of not addressing the issue when it comes up, and you've
Right.
got a room full of people that are looking at you and saying, well, what's the right answer here, Dan?
Right.
Yeah.
And then to come back 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks later and say, oh, well, that thing we talked about the other day, no one's here to talk about anymore.
Then you get
Let
the
me
answer.
let me give you some clarity.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I'm probably not doing a great job of giving you a
No,
direct
I-
question, but there's a pressure there,
Right.
right?
Sure.
So maybe give us some feedback on times where, like, what does your participation look like?
Yeah.
How
it's-
active
It's
and,
pretty active, to be honest.
proactive
Yeah.
is it? You know?
So it's pretty active.
And maybe Brittany too, because, you know,
Yeah.
This happened, the exact scenario happened to me last week at a planning commission meeting. I had a planning commission member say, this developer is such a great developer. I did a concrete job for him 15 years ago, and I had a great experience working with him. Well, now the public's all up at the podium saying you have a conflict, and I had to get up there and say, no, he's not, unless he's receiving a direct financial benefit from this approval tonight, or he has a relationship, he needs a current relationship, not one from an asphalt job 15 years ago, with the developer. He does not have a true conflict, and he is not, under the law, does not, in our bylaws, does not need to recuse in this situation. And that kind of calmed it down.
Okay.
But that certainly happens.
Right.
And we certainly have to advise on the fly, especially with regard to issues like conflict of interest, which can really get, you know,
Stressful.
stressful,
Yeah,
spicy.
and get pretty high.
Yeah.
Pretty high, okay.
The only thing I would add to that is just like the general approach of it is, you know, I've got a couple of clients, not as long as Tom with you guys, 30 years, but I've had clients for 17 and 18 years. Which, you know, there's a turnover of the entire council
Sure.
during that period of time. I always go back to, I've got to trust you and you've got to trust me. So if you know that I'm giving you some legal advice on the fly, and then I run back to the office and the next day find out, ooh, I didn't know about that case law, I'm not gonna get fired by you guys, because you knew I was trying to help on the fly, but then I followed up and I said, hey, wait, sorry, I made a mistake last night, should have read the case law, should have known the case law, whatever the case. If I've got trust that you got my back and I got your back, then it works, and you'll get that input from me. If on the other hand, you know, there's this relationship where it's like, well, you're a dummy because you did something on the fly, and why didn't you get it right? Well, then it's not gonna work, you know? So,
Okay.
that's how I look at it in the big picture of things,
Okay, appreciate that.
yeah.
What other questions?
We have number 2, 5, and 10, just in case.
Yeah, and I think we hit on some of it. One of the things that I just wanna, make sure everyone's comfortable with is I assume we're going to be looking to update some code, for one thing. So guiding through some of the more dated, language and thought process, I think is fair to assume might happen. Also, like we talked about, looking at the charter, because I've got an N of 1. I have I've sat behind this desk and not any other municipality's desk, and so I'm always appreciative when we get somebody who has kind of a broader scope and has seen other municipalities and understand that there might be a way to do it that is worth considering that we haven't thought about, didn't know about. So making sure everyone's comfortable with that, that's work that's squarely in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, in the proposal, you see the list of our clients. It really covers the gambit from Pontiac, which has its own unique issues.
Right.
to, you know, an affluent community like Oakland Township, one of the
Right.
most affluent. So we've, I mean, there's not much different in terms of the dynamics of a community that we haven't dealt with, which is that at the end of the day, they're the ones that drive what are the ordinance updates and the policy changes that councils are interested in. So, that's what we, you know, I keep saying it, but that's kind of what we do, right? And so we're very comfortable with updating ordinances and even charters.
Okay. Other questions? No, I mean, we've got our standard list.
Conversation, yeah.
Yeah, no, we've got our standard list of things that we're probably ready to put on the desk for whoever we hire, that are
Yeah,
just
great,
kind of
that's
some,
exciting.
yeah, you know, it's a way to say it.
You guys like municipal law, so.
Yeah, no, it's
Very
just,
exciting.
Right.
it's the navigating the things where people have already indicated they're probably ready to,
Challenge.
yeah, you know, so that's getting the guidance on how to navigate, a path. on it. Anyhow, anything else before we let you get on the road? for the
Yeah.
evening?
It's bedtime.
All right,
Yeah, no kidding, you guys put in a full day tonight.
yeah, well, it's, again, if we do this once every 45 years.
No pressure.
So, thank you very much.
Thank
Our
you.
goal is to then make a decision, and, you know, that's the goal. You've met councils before, hopefully
Yeah.
that's what actually happens, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We're very responsive as well.
Yeah.
Okay, good, good.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you,
Thank
nice
you.
meeting you.
Thank
all.
you
It was
very
good to
much.
see you all. Yes,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Brittany.
Right, we're back. Thank you, everybody. Interviews complete. Comments, feelings, questions?
First of all, good job, Personnel Committee, because I thought that all of those candidates were fantastic candidates, so.
It felt like a good
You didn't make it
representation
easy.
of sizes of
options.
firms and
Yeah.
options, all of whom have good references doing municipal work.
I am trying to refresh myself, not that this is the leading decision point, but I'm trying to refresh myself here. I've got Andy's chart on fee structure.
Yes?
I wrote that on the top of my thing.
And Warren, not to put you on the spot, but I know we've had some conversations of, you know, what do we think monthly this ends up looking like for any of these guys? Do you have that top of mind, you know, for the ones that have hourly and the ones that have a retainer? And is there
Well,
anything
is it-
you'd want to highlight there for us? And
Can I add to that question too? Is it per hour, per half hour, per 15 minutes? Like, are we, if we talk to someone for 15 minutes, are they billing us for the full hour?
No.
I don't think so. I think they
How,
also.
and what, how do they break that down?
So, a few comments here. So just as a general overview of the three firms, the highest hourly rate for pretty much every service was, under the general legal services category, was Foster Swift at $295 an hour. The next lowest, or next highest, depending on your point of view, was Rosati Schultz at $190 an hour. In their proposal, Rosati Schultz had also proposed an alternative $5,000 fixed monthly retainer. We did go to them and say, hey, you also listed an hourly rate. If we just want to operate on an hourly basis, and I'll talk about that momentarily, about what kind of basis we could do, you know, it was still the $190 an hour. The cheapest rate is the Kelly firm at $190.
165.
It's late. $165 an hour. So from a price difference, that's what we have. We're looking at 3 hourly rates. I want to remind the council that under the RFP, the council basically reserves the right to negotiate any kind of rate structure, timeline, retainer with the selected firm. So I would say that should we want to move forward with a candidate today, I'm envisioning a motion or a resolution that's basically directing the village manager to approach or enter into a contract negotiation with the firm, and then I can work with the firm. If you want to give me some guidance on, are we want a retainer, do we not, we can work into that, and then we can ultimately, you know, bring a contract back for the council's consideration. As far as my own personal thoughts and experience in retainers versus hourly, as I'm likely the one who generates 90% of the legal fees for the village, just given my role and as the main go-to from your legal questions, or if staff has legal questions, probably 90% me, 5% Susie for planning and zoning, and then 5% I would say you. I would be comfortable, at least maybe on the lower 2 hourly rates, to just proceed at an hourly basis. There's advantages to a retainer too, and again, I am comfortable with an hourly rate, but I just want to be clear, the council reserves that right to negotiate the final structure. So if that's, I can maybe negotiate a few different options if we want to see, or if we're all kind of okay with, hey, no, bring back just an hourly rate. Sometimes there's an hourly rate up to a certain point, so it's like a reverse retainer, so we're not going to exceed a certain month versus just, hey, we'll give you a blanket $4,000, $5,000 a month. I've seen all the different combinations, and I'm comfortable operating under any of them, but of all the communities I've worked at, this one so far has had the least amount of legal day-to-day, weekly interactions, so I'm pretty certain we're going to be served well with any of these 3 firms from a cost standpoint, let alone a service standpoint.
And I will say that most times, I was looking at one of them that did not specify. A lot of them are on a 1/10 of an hour type of basis.
That's kind of an industry standard.
Yeah.
But we could negotiate.
So they look at a 1/10 of an hour, you know, some of them specify if the call's under 10 or 15 minutes, they're not gonna bill you for it. We currently are, on a monthly retainer, with our current attorney. We had
Extra
one.
stuff, sometimes there's extra outside
Yeah.
scope, so-
There are things that are outside of the scope. We, you know, and when the last time we went through this process and Mr. Ryan responded, he was asking for an increase in the monthly retainer. We did have one of the firms that offered a monthly retainer because they thought that's what we wanted, but they said they were more comfortable billing on an hourly basis just so that everyone's clear on what it is that we're doing. I think we'll know more after a year with whoever we choose, because you'll get kind of an, you know, they'll be comfortable by that point. We'll have a cadence of what we're doing. You know, this one specifies that they time based upon tenths of an hour. So, I mean, you know, if it's a, yeah. Yes, sir.
So what I'd like, you know, personally for me, if let's say, we're making a decision, and the only way that I would feel right about making a decision and picking one of these three, for me personally, knowing Tom Ryan's on a monthly retainer, I'd like to know, like, what is the monthly retainer? And how many, I know it's gonna take a lot of doing, but there's a way to gather all that information and say, okay, well, Tom did this litigation here, general counsel here, to kind of break it down to see what it would be an hourly rate for Tom right now, just to get an idea of the workload itself. Then you'll know how much you're spending, say monthly or annually, as a per hour basis or a retainer.
I don't know that we're gonna be able to compare them, because you've got someone who has 40 years of historical knowledge versus somebody who's gotta learn it.
I thought about
You
that
know,
too.
and so,
The retainer is basically a line item listing retainer. I don't have an hourly accounting of Mr. Ryan's services. I don't know how many hours he spends each month. I just know the
I'm sure he knows his
retainer.
hourly rate.
If it's an outside the scope, you know, if it's like a litigation thing he's working on, he spends 4 hours on, yeah, that's itemized. But just the general stuff that I believe is $3,000 a month, I could not break that down.
Okay.
And I
All
do
right.
not know if he tracks it at that.
Fair enough.
He's obviously not here, so I can't comment.
I just would imagine that if I were the attorney, I know what my hourly rate would be based on my retainer, 3,000 a month, that's all.
I do
could break
like
it
the
down.
idea of an hourly rate with a cap, you know, ceilings flat. I think that's a rational approach. if we
Especially
don't-
the
if
first
we don't
year, I
feel
think,
for
might be the heaviest anyway, just as we transition.
Because you're gonna have thousands of questions right off the bat for them, right?
I got a list.
it's, the challenge is we have the options we have that are priced at what they are.
Yep.
So we have to pick one regardless of what our
No,
history has
no,
been.
I get that, but
You know.
you still wanna be somewhat, you know, cognizant of what you're spending on legal.
Oh, I know, but I understand, but I don't think what Tom has done reflects on what the other three options are going to do.
You're not comparing apple to apple.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I get it.
Yeah, so, thoughts, feelings, recommendations?
I did like the first firm. I came in liking the third firm, but I kinda changed my mind, halfway through the first firm, so. Personally for me.
That was very impressive, the first one as well.
It may be helpful, and just throwing a suggestion out here, don't like, tell me, maybe everybody lists their top two, and we might easily see if a motion was made for a number one, if where it would land, just a thought, you know, I think we could also just go on.
Like a straw vote?
Yeah, you know, we could,
Like
I've seen that
your
done before.
Preference of order, like say
Yeah,
1, 2, 3?
like, yeah, like everybody says who their first choice is, they might, the solution may present itself naturally.
Who did you like? Just curious.
I liked all the firms. I have worked with the Kelly firm for 3 years in Grosse Pointe Park. I enjoyed the representation. I also worked with Ms. Cole, or Klopp, at Rosati on a single issue when she was actually special counsel at Grosse Pointe Park for a conflict of interest thing. She did a phenomenal job as well. I don't have any experience with Foster Swift, but again, I'm really pleased with the array of candidates, and just from an administration standpoint, we're gonna be able to work very well with any of them.
Thank you for that answer, Warren.
I mean, I think my preference ordering is in the ordering of their interviews, honestly. So, if that helps anybody or does anything to aid the conversation. Anyone?
I thought the first candidates were probably my favorite of the three. I think their approach to conversation and giving advice was impressive. I don't know, they had a good balance of giving opinion, but also throwing in some experience being pushy. And not that I think any of the other ones were, but there was something about them that felt easy, and I felt confident with the things that they were saying. Also, as we were going through our questions, I noticed that just in their conversation, they were kind of picking out and answering the questions kind of almost before we could even ask them. Which, I mean, almost made it hard for us to ask questions because they had already answered a lot of them. But yeah, I was impressed with them.
And if I could, for Taylor Swift, not Taylor Swift, but Foster Swift, the Gabara was kind of more personable for me, and then Anne wasn't as personable as far as, you know, she only knew library law, you know, versus Gabara kind of knew municipal law. So that's where I was kind of just iffy about the Foster. But to Warren's point, I mean, I think we'd be served okay with any of the three, personally.
I like Foster. I thought they have resources, they have a lot of specialists, I think they all have specialization within their firms, but I think that they, you know, do we need that? That would be the question. If we don't need it, then I'm comfortable with the first firm that we interviewed. I'm less about, I like the professionalism, I like the separation of personalization. I think we, in our community, need a bit of that, some objective perspective that's almost sterile to some degree with good advice. I felt the other two firms outside of Foster will give more, I mean, I think definitely Kelly would give more. It would be more of like what we have today. And I think Rosati would be, to me, more in between. But I like the kind of sterile legal advice. That's what I prefer, and then we make choices. I felt that they had a lot of municipal experience, were purely municipal, and I felt that there could be, not bias, but a lot of information we would get from other municipalities they're serving, and that information could be an artificial bias that, oh, these other communities are doing that, or what have you, as opposed to, this is what the law is specifically, and that's all there is to it. That's why I was asking the questions of them, because they had so much kind of municipal experience. There's just a risk to me that if we have something we want to do or a preference, because we do have a few unique aspects to this community, I think, compared to the region. And I think those make us a bit special, but anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm fine with either. The fact that Foster's more expensive, I don't know that you get your money's worth particularly with the specialization that you get, but I did like that concept. I mean, my notes were pretty straightforward, but
Just a clarification. You said that Foster Swift was strictly municipal?
no, that was Rosati, was strictly municipal.
Right, okay, okay, I see.
I liked that Foster had a broader base. I like that they have the specialists, like they were dropping names on every particular topic that could possibly come up. I thought that was a resource that might make them more efficient, you know, rather than somebody digging through things. You just call Bob up and Bob knows exactly X, Y, Z on this particular issue. So from a perspective, it might be a little more expensive, but I don't know if they're more efficient. That's a hypothesis, so I wouldn't make a decision based on that. But I do like the extensiveness of their kind of resources that they have at their fingertips. And they both kind of answered questions very similarly as far as conflict of interest, as far as how they would deal with questions in the meeting, how they would deal with conflicts within the council and or administration. So I thought that was all par for the course. So it's really down to what their differences are in resource and approach to municipal law. And I'm just more preferential of sterile rather than.
When this came up and you brought the three that were gonna come in, you said you held Zoom calls with all of them, they talked about it. You said one of them was really impressive and that you talked to, one of the council. I'm taking it, was I hearing things, or was one of the people that you
My
interviewed?
recollection was that it was Courtney from Foster Swift. I think I was
Was that,
pretty happy with how she answered
it was
everything.
her? that you
From
were
that.
thinking? Because I thought the lady that, Kristen,
But I
was very
yeah.
good too. So I didn't, I was trying, in my mind, I was trying to figure out who you kind of were, you were meaning by that, but.
I don't recall that conversation. I think we were impressed with all of them. I still maintain my preference for Rosati. I think based on, I approached my thoughts on it slightly differently than Mr. O'Gorman, because I think about the fact that they do have specialists, but they're all within the municipal government sphere rather than having specialists outside of. So their real estate people are gonna be real estate people as it affects government needs, rather than real estate people, outside of it. So I see that as a benefit. They appeared collaborative and conversational. I think, I think we got more of the similar responses from the first two, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But, I think it's a good mix, a proven, it has the, I don't know, mama bear feel to me of being bigger. Their municipal practice is bigger than Foster Swift's municipal practice. Foster Swift has more outside resources, and I say this as someone who has spent most of my career in a large firm where you do have very specialized people. So I appreciate that, but in this context, looking at our needs, as I see them, Rosati feels like the right fit from my seat.
Yeah, I see him equally as useful to the village. I'm very biased against opinion being influenced on legal interpretation. I want to make sure that whatever we get is legal opinion, not opinion. I think we've got opinion, we got plenty of opinion in the village. We even have opinion on this council. I want to get away from any sort of opinionated legal advice. I'd like that to be all purely objective. So I think they both can do a really good job in that regard. I just felt Foster was more, sterile's not the right word, but it's what keeps coming to
Dispassionate.
mind. Yeah, dispassionate, that's a good way to say it.
And I kind of view it as providing the guidance as to how we want to be treated, or the kind of advice we want.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that the legal advice would be presented with the knowledge of the context of the municipal needs. And it feels like, to me, Rosati has the broadest set of experience in that arena, because they're the largest municipal specific group.
So George, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
Make a motion to allow the village manager to enter into negotiations with Rosati, Schultz, Joppich, and Amtsbuechler for legal services for the village of Beverly Hills.
Support.
I would just say, subject to final ratification by the village council.
Thank you, Mr. Rothy. Subject to final ratification of village council.
Support.
Do we need a roll call? Let's do it, just to make sure. Ms. Brown, would you please call the roll?
Mr. O'Gorman?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Cascavedi?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
No.
Motion passed.
All right. Knock down my agenda. I think we have public comments next, so the public could take the podium. Just kidding, there is no public. With that, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?